Hello, welcome to Jesus TV, simulcast on Jesus Radio, and also available on www.thetracklesspath.com. Do I get that right, Jonathan?
Correct.
www.thetracklesspath.com. And Jesus TV, you'll find at www.getmorejesus. You can scroll on down to Jesus TV, and you'll see an episode. Well, you'll see a television program called Poetry and Prophecy, and we are on episode 8. And what we're going to do is what we've done before. Jonathan's going to read us a poem, then we're going to discuss it. Jonathan, tell us what we got.
Okay, so the name of the poem is We Will Not Miss a Beat. And I'm just going to read it from your thing that you created here.
Okay.
The slideshow or whatever. All right, so we thought that we could find it by looking back, but we cannot. It lies in the future, and we will never turn around. We'll never look back. We'll keep on moving forward with our eyes upon the thing that's coming, even as the world comes to a screeching halt, because they cannot imagine any future not of their own making. And some will attempt to bunker down and retreat into the past, but they will find that they cannot, for there is no amount of hoarding that can prepare you for what's coming. But for those who choose the future, this is only the beginning. And if the world has been free with its substance unto carnal pleasure, we will be more free with our substance unto the acquisition of friends in heavenly places, and faith, and everything we ever needed, flowing out from the unseen cache of God's limitless storehouse. And as for technology, we embrace it, wherein it serves to point us to the light. And when the towers fall and the world is weeping for their loss, we'll erect new ones made of faith, so that upon Mount Zion, we will not miss a beat.
I like it.
Mike, that's it. That's the end of it. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, take it up. Let's take it from the top and kind of share your insights as we go along.
All right, so we thought that we would find it by looking back, but we cannot. It lies in the future, and we will never turn around. We will never look back. We'll keep moving forward with our eyes upon the thing that's coming, even as the world comes to a screeching halt. So, I think much, it's funny how it's like our religious frameworks get tied up with other ideas, okay? And it kind of makes sense. It's like right now in the world, we look at how bad things have gotten because of people imbibing in carnal pleasure, and it's never been easier than in the past, than right now. And so we look back and we look at the pioneers. We read books like Little House on the Prairie, and we think, man, they had it so good. But it's a little bit deceptive. It's not completely accurate. It's like there's more opportunities for us to show our carnal nature in the world that we live in today. Sins which were far away from people back then are right in our faces today. And so we think that somehow they were better, and that we should go backward. We should go backward into the past. And I've been a part of that world where it's like I'm going to bunker down. I'm going to prepare for what's coming. And a lot of people, I think, are preparing for a time when all of the things of technology and all of the things of today kind of fall apart. I kind of think they will to some extent. But even like if you look back, like I watched a documentary not long ago, maybe a year or two ago, 2 or 3 years ago. Anyways, I watched this show, and this guy was talking about the Iron Age. I think it was the Iron Age, or was it the Bronze Age? I can't remember. But he was talking about this particular civilization that fell, and they were the center of, I can't remember if it was the Bronze Age or the Iron Age or whatever. But this particular nation grew just super wealthy, and they were an empire nation, so they were kind of taking over other places, and they were doing it because they had the latest technology. And it talks about how when they fell, he talked about how when they fell, it was like it kind of came on them quickly. And I can't remember what it was that happened. Something happened, and everything fell apart. Their whole society fell apart almost overnight. I mean, it was probably over like 40 years, 50 years, but that's like nothing in the history of the earth. So it's like almost overnight, it just completely turned upside down. But the fascinating thing is that, it's like he talked about how like this, the other nations around it picked up the technology. you know the one thing that we have today is that the world is so interconnected that it's like when one falls, everything's going to fall. But the truth is that I think that there's a reason for all of these ideas coming forth during their times. It's like we live in a time today that's almost spiritual in its nature, in the sense that we can look at anything we want anytime we want. Well, that's kind of like heaven. It's like a world where you're not bound by time and space, and you can it's like you and I right now are communicating, and we live in two different states, and this would have been impossible 150 years ago. And that's pointing us, it's like there's the prayer, it's like thy kingdom come, the Lord's prayer, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. There is a coming of heavenly things to the earth. And it's like we kind of have that today, and it's like, and we're not doing well with it. you know we're doing very poorly. And surely there's a fall coming, because all civilizations fall. All civilizations fall. All civilizations will fall. It's just, when there's a beginning to something, there's eventually an end. But there's always something on the other side. And what has this all been pointing us to? Why was there an Iron Age and a Bronze Age, and then, and an Industrial Age, and all of those things? It's like, well, it wasn't just so that we could be more comfortable. I mean, that's been good that we're more comfortable, because we can sit down and think more about spiritual things, but we can also imbibe our lusts more readily. And so it's like it creates a more divisive situation. So I began the poem kind of thinking about this, how it's like so many of those that I know who have a religious persuasion, and I kind of look at myself in the past too, in the way that I used to think. There's a thought that it's like we're going to what's the word? We're going to go backward, but that's just not the truth. And it's like what I see is that there will come an end to much of this, but the thing that's on the other side of it is the thing to which all of this technology has been pointing all the time. And you could say, I wrote a poem once called The Land of Miracles. It's a land of miracles. And we live in a land of miracles. That's the fascinating thing. I mean, this phone is a miracle, but it's kind of a man-made miracle. It's like, and who we praise is the people who did it, right? Very little praise is given to God for this, okay? And perhaps the reason is because we look at it and we see our own ingenuity. But when everything falls, it's like it's going to create an emptiness that can only be filled by the thing that it was pointing to. It was pointing to something beyond. So we keep on moving forward, our eyes towards the thing that's coming, because sorry, this is a long, I'll hand the talking stick back in a second, but it's yeah. We have this idea, so we think about Adam and Eve, right? And that whole story about the beginning, right? What happened in the beginning. And we have this idea of like a millennium, or like a time that we're going towards. And what was my point with that? You know, it's so it may sound strange, but there's a reason to look to the future. Now that means we have to live in today, and we don't look to the future the way that the world looks to the future. It's like the world is looking at all that it can do and all that's coming as far as technology and everything else. And oh boy, isn't it great what's coming? And it's like that's not the thing we're looking towards. In fact, if anything, we're looking forward to the time when all that falls, in a sense. Not because we're going to go back to Little House on the Prairie. We're not going back to Little House on the Prairie. We've kind of been spoiled to it. I don't think anybody could survive in those terms. And maybe it would come to that. And maybe there will be people doing that. But there's this idea that there is something coming, which it's the thing for which we have longed with all of our technology. And you know, it's a world where you don't have to think every time you turn around about what you're going to eat. Remember, we talked about that in an episode. Like, you know, it's like the hunter-gatherers who, you know, it's like the answer to every question is get more meat. So I'll hand the talking stick back, but it's like this idea that we're looking forward with faith towards something that's coming as we go through this tumultuous time that's coming. And as things fall, it's like those who have this mindset are going to rejoice because they know that something even better than this is coming, and it's just as real. And I mean that may sound strange, but it's like this thing to which this was pointing and things, and but it doesn't lie in the past. It's like we get the idea that our ancestors were such great people because they worked hard and they had more wholesome lives. Yes, they did, and they really were better people. But the point is like they were and they weren't. It's like the you know, the history of the earth that we have, except for the beginning of Genesis, is the history of a fallen world. We're not going back to that. We are not going back to any version of history. It is something completely new. I'll pass the talking stick back. So.
Okay, so what you've heard is Jonathan on the talking stick. We use that reference as though we actually have a stick. People are like, where's the stick? Well, we have the stick of Judah and the stick of Joseph. So there's the Bible and the Book of Mormon. But what we're talking about is a metaphor for like, hey, I've got this. I'm going to talk. So we're thinking of a microphone. And I'm glad that Jonathan had that. It gave me time to think about what is right in front of your eyes. So this is one of the things God has had me delight in, revel in. So I'm called by Jesus to build Zion in the open, like Noah built the ark in the open. And so what you're viewing right now, when Jonathan talks about technology, and he's kind of going back, well, it'll fall, but not fall. This will happen and not happen. What does that sound like to you? It sounds like speculation, all right? And it is, because guess what prophecy is? Speculation, inspired speculation. You can speculate things that are absolutely true. I speculate that Jesus is coming. And so if you look up that definition, speculate, you'd say, well, it kind of says that you're just guessing. Well, that's what I want to point you to, is the nature of prophecy. We have likenesses of prophecy, and we've been given technology to be able to, in a limited way, prophesy what's going to happen with the weather. And these are getting more and more accurate over time. I would say, well, what happened there? Did we get closer and closer to Jesus? In some ways, because he pours down blessings, and the ability to predict weather, that can save your life. It can save lots of people's lives. Like there's a hurricane coming. let's all go, leave Houston or whatever. So they've got plans for that. They've done it. So what's right in front of you? I started this by saying there's something right in front of you, and it's a technology, but it's not one that you can easily see. So God has had to give me eyes to see it. So when you come to a television program called Poetry and Prophecy, you're like, I could see where you're like, I'm not seeing new technology. Well, then you can't see it. You're going to have to pluck out your offensive eye, because what's coming, whether it's our television program or another television program, is called the Spirit of Prophecy. And it's kind of higher technology than swords and plowshares and so forth like that. It has the ability to do things that are, we would call miracles, not human. It's predicting in a way that is, you see in the scriptures, where they would prophesy something well in the future, and they would have understandings, and those understandings did not come from traditional means. But are they technology? That's the question we could ask. Does God use technology? In the scriptures it says he uses means, means. He does use technology. Bottom line, that's what technology is. It's a technique. Are God's techniques the same as ours? No. Does he use different techniques that we wouldn't be able to understand? Yes, because he's an infinite being. Does he live in a realm that's different than ours? Yes. Is it connected to ours? Yes. Do we understand it? No. So there's technologies and parts of technologies we don't understand. And the only way we can really understand them, other than the things he's already revealed, because there's some things he's revealed and you don't have to have a lot of revelation. You just read it and say, God exists. You still have to have faith because you can't see him. But anyways, that technology is well developed. But okay, so where does he float when he's around here? That would have to be revealed to you. I don't know where, I don't see God. And like, well, then how did he get inside you? Is he inside you? You're asking things that are hard to conceive, but it doesn't stop me from having a general understanding, because I can look at things I previously knew through the technology of God, through the prophecy of God. And he says, I am there, I'm with you. And he builds a sacrament where I eat his flesh and his blood, or semblances of that promise that he'll be with me if I'll obey his commandments. So that emphasis you had, Jonathan, on technology is of extreme interest to me because of my particular mission. Has to do with technology. And that's a term that I use comfortably. Others wouldn't, because it doesn't seem to fit very well in the religious realm. You don't go find the word technology in the Bible. You don't hear the word technology in church very often, other than what a blessing we have some technologies, and also, oh, you know what, we need to learn to shut down our cell phones and so forth. Sometimes this technology gets in the way of us hearing God. Well, what do you think hearing God is? It is a technology, okay? The ability to read someone's mind, not just someone, but God's mind, that's throughout scriptures. Reading the mind of God. So I was talking about it today in one of the television episodes on Jesus TV. Once again, did I just say Jesus TV? Yes, I did. Does God have a television program? Because that would be new technology that I don't know about if I haven't been to Jesus TV. Correct. And even if you went to Jesus TV, would you be able to believe it? Let's suppose Jesus did have a TV station, but it looked like a manger scene. You're saying, oh, so there's a King of Kings being born. Show me that. And you go there and you see a little baby, and you don't have the technology. Let's just say you don't know what this baby's mission is and so forth. You didn't follow a star. Those are technologies God could use, techniques, if you will, means to reinforce what you're looking at. Looks like a little teeny baby, but this is the King of the universe. Everything changes with this baby. And so you would have to have eyes to see. God would have to inform you in some manner, ancient scriptures perhaps, or even just on the fly. You're sitting out there taking care of your sheep, and God uses some technology, I guess, to transport angels, and they say, glory to God in the highest. And how are they talking to you? I don't know. They must have some technology. Well, they have voices. Is that technology? And that's where I would love to just dive deep and start. And I have with Jesus. He's like, what is technology, Greg? And I'm like, as I came to my understanding, you use technology. So then I can understand it by movies like The Force. Luke used the Force. So he had some kind of thing he was looking at, and it was magical. And it told him where he could drop the bomb to blow up the Death Star. But those guys weren't successful. And so he heard this voice. Well, how did he hear that voice? Does he have technology to hear that? Because I know he probably has radio transmitters in his ear, but I don't understand how he heard somebody who has already departed. Oh, well, that's not technology. That's religion. What? That's spirituality. And so we have these nice things to kind of cover over. We don't understand that technology, and we don't want to call it technology because we don't want to confuse the things. Well, for me, it's been confused, and God has made it clear. My ways, including all technology, are higher than your ways. And so then I will dispense those things. And so when Luke here used the Force, he had to remove the lower technology. So when Jonathan's talking about technologies, we're not going back. We may go back for time as individuals. There may be an EMP go off, but God will have technologies. And what he's often trying to do is get rid of this and give you the bigger one. So we call that sacrifice. Sacrifice, if it's done in the name of the Lord, is only to get yourself a better version of the iPhone, so to speak, of a better version of whatever it is, like you yourself is technology. You have this vessel can actually, I don't know how, but it can contain spirits. I can have devil spirits. I can have Jesus spirits. I can house that. And how does that work? I don't know. Scientists are just trying to figure out how it works bodily. And there's so many things they don't have their noodle around on that. And now you're asking a question about how this thing that doesn't look like a cell phone, because you know how you download apps on your phone? Well, this vessel that you're looking at, it can download information from another realm. And it's so provable by the scriptures that he says he'll pour down his spirit. Where's he pouring it? On the ground, out in the puddle? No, he's pouring it down into his people. And he's prophesied that. He's told us that's going to happen, like at the end of days. And if we would receive it, then we would receive from him. These are things that are more comfortable talking about, like gifts. I just told you about mind reading. That is a gift, to be able to read God's mind. And it's given to every child and adult. And we possess that capacity at greater or less extent. So when Luke was going like this, and he pulled this off, he had developed to such an extent he could hear from a different realm, not just like the speaker in his ear, but he could hear past time, past space. He could hear his friend and the mentor who taught him, who was trying to convince him, stop using those eyes, use the Force, Luke. And so everybody who watches that movie, I guess everybody has an intuitive sense that, yeah, it's speaking a truth, that there is a force. And people sometimes call that the universe. They call it flow. For instance, one of the cool terms they'll use in secular land is flow. So people get in the flow and they describe it in all kinds of ways, but basically you lose kind of track. You're playing the guitar, playing the oboe, and you get in some mystic state where time and space now go away. And they describe these things, and it's a gift from God. It's a technology. We call it like peace that surpasseth all understanding, the flow. It's hard to put your hand on. Like, what is that? Like even how your phone works. People are like, whoa, I downloaded an app. I fully understand it. But most people don't understand what that even means. They drag some symbolic icon into their phone. Now it turns into a flashlight. Well, they get that. But how it works? Oh, no. You're not going to go there. And so God has these operations that we currently have access to, and they're not small things. Being able to read the mind of God, So when people talk about gifts of the Spirit, sometimes like you got to be a really holy person to do that. Not all of them. You can read God's mind. You might not be able to read your fellow human's mind, although that is a gift as well. And God usually bestows it upon people who've proven very faithful. But it allows you to discern their spirits. You can actually discern what's going on. These are technologies. That's what I guess I'm underlying, is that don't worry, we're not going to be bombed back into the caveman day. What we're going to be doing is letting go of the smaller things and using the force. And that's why President Nelson, hashtag hear him is what he said, hear Jesus, because he says, if you don't learn to hear God, we happen to live at a time that you're going to die spiritually first, but that's just preliminary to dying physically second. But if you die spiritually, you want to die anyway, so it doesn't really matter. You die spiritually, you're walking dead. And we have many people who are near that point in their lives where they're not alive in Christ. They're not alive in anything. They're just going through the motions. They've lost a very important technology. They've lost, let's just say it's gotten rusty. They haven't been listening to that still small voice. That's the mind and will of God. And that's called prophecy. So I'm going to summarize this, and I'll turn this talking stick back over to you, Jonathan. Summarize this by saying you are watching something that's rugged. Okay. So all technology that when it's shared is not always in the most prime version. This particular technology is being used by two dirty, filthy, rotten, hard-hearted, hopeful sinners. That's Jonathan and that's me. So we're broken, but here's the thing, we're willing. And what were we willing to do? To acknowledge that the things that we receive from God are not us. Like Jonathan's poems, I could see it. That's why I was attracted to those. Like, that's Jesus. I know where he got that poem. That's Jesus talking. And I recognize that as prophecy. Okay. So prophecy is a technology. Oh my goodness. There's so many secular folks who would love to get their hand on that gift, because then you can prophesy where the stock market's going, if you have money, where to put it so it doesn't get hit. Back in 2008, that's what a lot of rich people could see it coming, like they see it now. I talked to a rich person yesterday or 2 days ago, and I said, so you think it's going to fall? And they said, yep. And I said, it's going to be worse than 2008. They said, a lot worse. And right now they're trying to find, where do they put their little babies, their money babies, so that they don't get blown up by the big old bomb that's coming. And that happened in 2008. And a lot of times their little babies die. Oh, my 401k took a hit. I put it over in gold, and this economy acted really weird, because it's not supposed to do that when this happens. And so they have these predictive models. They're trying to, and they're talking to financial advisors. This is like talking to prophets. Go see the seer. So they'll get on and they'll hear Kramer talk about, oh, don't buy this, buy that. And these are approximations. So God gives us oftentimes lower approximations. That's what that is. And so that we can learn these patterns, that when he wants to introduce us to the force, he goes, yeah, Luke, you know that thing you're looking at? I need you to look at something else. So Luke knows, okay, so I have the technology of looking, and I've currently been focusing it on this screen thingy. Now he's asking me to look. I think I understand that. Using some other thing that Yoda taught me. Do I have to look? I don't look with my eyes. I feel it. Oh, this is awkward. How can I trust feelings? And so that's a technology, though, that God is about ready to bring to us in great measure, because he'll create a dire situation. You're going to die spiritually and then physically if you don't use the force, or in other words, if you don't use these higher technologies. And what I'm here to tell the world as a street preacher, you already have these. You know, you've prayed, you've heard God's voice. All right. So you already have a gift in great measure. So don't let any religious person say, oh, you have to be a really super religious person in order to get cool gifts. You just have to turn to God, and he is so free to give. So you can do awesome things, and a lot of you already do. Gifts of music by dirty, filthy, rotten, whoring rock stars, and he just like pours down that blessing because he has some kind of covenant, like you're going to be really, really good at this music, and they are. No, despite all their weaknesses. Now, whether they acknowledge that's a gift from God, the rest of us listen to their songs, we go, "Oh, that's from Jesus," you know, and then we're stunned, like, why would somebody who's so broken, so filthy, be given such a gift? Oh, what a waste of a gift. Then we should look at ourselves and go, oh yeah, me too. So anyhow, back to you.
Wow, you hit on a lot of things. I got a whole page of notes. So
Well, Jesus had me do it to
wow.
his hand. Yeah.
Well, so wow. I think I'm going to disagree with. I rarely will disagree with you on something, but I think I'm going to
I like
disagree that.
disagreement. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, you said that people look at these rock stars and say, "Oh, that's Jesus," but I don't think they do. I think they look at the rock stars and they say,
No,
"Oh, that's."
they're listening to the music, and they hear the beauty in the music. No, because
Well, they know
could,
that it's beautiful and that comes from that's good, and that's what you're saying. I get that.
Oh yeah. So let me be clear. So maybe we erase the disagreement. Here's what I believe, and I think Jonathan believes it too. Anything lovely, praiseworthy, of good report is of God. Anything, and a corrupt tree can still bring forth good fruit. That's the thing. He's like, well, hold it. It says in the scriptures it can't. Right, but our experience has been, I don't care. You go check out Beethoven's life, Mozart's. If you don't think their music is beautiful, I don't know what's wrong with you. Or the guy who wrote Les Mis. You go check out his personal life, and you tell me that a corrupt tree can't bring forth good fruit. That guy brought forth good fruit. I'm not worthy. Here's how I resolve it. I'm not worthy to judge trees, whether they're righteous or unrighteous. What happened to him during his life? Because God has this thing, and it's called a variance. He gives huge, huge variances to people based on their previous experience, and we can't see them. We go, oh, I didn't know you were carrying that burden. And so we can declare that, but we don't have the technology yet to look back or even to look on their heart and go, oh, yeah, there would go I if I was you too. I didn't know that happened to you in your crib, and then when you were older and older. What a whack world. The fact that you were able to create anything lovely is a miracle. And so then you start changing your story. And maybe it's because you love the music. I got to find a way to love this guy, or at least redeem him in my own mind, because I can't listen to this. So that would be my argument. My friend is, I'm not pointing to the whole person. When we look at a whole person and see Tommy Lee and Pam, yeah, they back in the day, they went and made a porn shot. That was Pam, whatever her name is, Tommy Lee of Motley Crue. I do not approve of this, nor did Jesus. Yeah, let's go down to the Bahamas and you guys can do a porn thing, which is recently celebrated on Hulu. Yeah, Pamela Anderson, who was of Baywatch, and this rock star. He was living debauchery, right? Not celebrating debauchery, but I'm telling you what, Home Sweet Home, if he had anything to do with that song, Jesus baptized that song, and now it has a beautiful, but the melody, that came from Jesus. And it was actually a reflective song, even when Motley Crue did it. And I think Jesus loves sinners. He will sit with sinners. He will go to the studio with sinners, because their souls do just what ours do. They ache. They ache, even if they're doing all this debauchery. One reason they're doing it is it's just like, there's got to be more to this world. And so they're narcissists and so forth, and they're struggling with all kinds of mental illness, addiction. And yet, look at what they produce, and by their fruits you shall know them. You don't know the whole thing. So that's what, anyhow, are we on the same page there?
Yep. Yeah, no, I totally agree. So you spurn new thoughts. I think I'm not going to go down that direction too much, other than just to say there, it says God looks upon the heart. And so I just realized I got to plug in. God looks upon the heart. And I'm going to save my comments about that for another time, but that does erase the disagreement. So going back to what we were talking about, a couple of things. You mentioned prophecy, and it's a strange thing. I can't say that I understand how it all works, other than certain things become evident to somebody who is moving down a certain path, and it's oftentimes the thing that's evident is evident to everybody, but somebody they see it more clearly because of their vantage point. And so they're the ones, I think about Jeremiah in the Bible. It's like, his job was to go and say, look, we're going to be carried captive, right? And so it's like, I have the gut feeling that everybody knew that. But what did they want? They wanted all the other ones that were saying, no, everything's gonna be fine. All the other apostles, no, don't listen to him. It's all gonna be fine. And they're like, yes, that's what I want to hear. I mean, you look in their society today, and it does not take a prophet to say that that you talk about this collapse, and it's like the weird. So we move on to this thought. So the thought of the collapse is, it's like, it's two-edged, because there's no end to anything. I mean, there could be millions of people that will die over this, and yeah, right. It's like there were people in 1929 that took their lives because they lost all their stocks. It's a terrible day, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, it's like, and I love that you brought in Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, Luke.
And I love, because it's like, the funny thing about this is, it's like, in a way, see, I feel like, in a way, like, I'm standing on the outside, like you're obviously from a mainstream LDS point of view.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm on the outside, kind of my affiliate or my non-affiliation, really. It's like, through a series of strange circumstances, I have found myself, on the one hand, on the outside of all of these frameworks and looking in, and on the other hand, feeling like a part of all of them, but knowing that none of them would really accept me if, I wanted to fully be, because largely, I think, because I could not fully be the one thing that they are. And it's like it feels like trying to fit myself onto a postage stamp. It's like, and I'm like this all the time. It's like, oh, I can't believe that. Oh, darn, crap. Oh, I can't believe that. Oh, man, what can I believe? Well, you can believe this. Oh,
Well,
and so
I'll tell you from where I'm at, I can believe whatever I want. Just like I told the woman on the plane, she goes, "You can't drink Coke." I said, as a Mormon, I can snort Coke. I can have sex before marriage. I can have sex after marriage. I said, fundamental to our faith is free agency. I can do whatever I want. And I said, and you go up and down Mormonism, you're going to find people who are demonstrating that. Oh, it looks like you can be a Mormon and do this or that. And so I said, now what you're talking about is being a devout, faithful Mormon. Then that's self-restriction. That's where you decide for yourself, like, I'm not going to drink Coca-Cola because I think it's evil because it has caffeine. And that might be your upbringing. And then later the prophet will declare, well, no, we never really had that. Gaslight. Yeah, but why didn't we have Coke at BYU? Hushy. And so you realize these cultural things and so forth. And why I found comfort in my faith, because my faith's in Jesus. It's not in an institution. And if Jesus if he wants me to go to church, I'll go to church. Which one do you want me to go to, Jesus? He told me, Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. But I don't like church. And that doesn't matter, because do you like everything that I do with you, Greg? No, I don't. Oftentimes. But will you do it? Yes. And so suffer it to be so for now. So the constraints that you're expressing have been expressed by many people. And it's always my response, like, No, we choose to believe things. They go, oh, I can't believe things. No, belief's a choice. Get over that. We all choose to believe. If you watch humanity, but people believe whatever they freaking want. They might say, oh, I can't believe that. They believe whatever they want. They can go to Disneyland and say, oh, it was a good time. 10 hours up, 10 hours back, spending lots of money for a 3-minute ride. And they had a good time. Well, if you can do that, my friend, you can believe almost anything in this world that you want. Now you can say, but I don't want to. I only want to believe the truth, is what people say. Well, so do I. But you know what? Until you know it, guess what you have to do? Pick up something. Okay, well, I think I'll do that. I just won't go to church. I'll stay in bed on Sunday. Well, there you go. Well, it's not because I believe in that. It absolutely is. You just believe in it more than going to church. And so anyhow, that's a big, deep, I'm not a doctrinaire,
Yeah,
but I've had so many conversations with Jesus about this, because a lot of people, and I don't know that you're one of them, but they'll struggle with this. Like, I can't believe that. And I'll investigate it and I'll say, you don't understand belief. Belief is a choice. You can be flippant. I believe in UFOs. Okay, how do you organize your life around that? I don't. Well, how deep a belief? Now you're asking a good question. Would I die for my belief in UFOs? No, I'd die for my country, but I don't even feel that great about my country. I'll die for God. So you start to, now you're starting to say, well, how much do you believe it? And so we do not have a good language. Bottom line is, belief is kind of rugged. It's like love. Oh, I love you. Oh, or friends. I've got friends on Facebook, Jonathan. I got 450 friends on Facebook. Woo, you're surrounded by friends. What does that really mean? Are they coming to your funeral? Are they sending you money? It's like, oh, well, quit drilling down on that. So friends, love, most concepts in the world we live are kind of like that, where we just kind of have an intuitive sense of how they're used. But when it comes to belief and the constraints we feel and regarding organizations, there's an underlying something else going on oftentimes. They're like, I don't want to go to that church. Why? Because I don't believe it's fully true. Oh, so you want to go to a church where everything, you believe absolutely everything. Well, good luck on finding that. I've never found one person who goes to a church where they believe everything that's being touted. Now, they might suffer it to be so for now, but you could go to my church. Women, we were told by President Benson to stay home and have kids. Well, they don't talk about that very much anymore. Did they withdraw that belief? Not officially. So you're telling me that there's people within my faith who are faithful members who don't believe that still thing? There's so many beliefs that are like that. And anyhow, thanks, Jonathan, for letting me grab the stick away from you. But I delight in our capacity to believe what we want to believe as humans. We will, and we'll grab any scrap of knowledge. This is one of the things God taught me through a psychologist. He says, that's our gift as humans. We don't have to have a lot of evidence. It's not like follow the science unless there's this hype. No, as humans, and this is all humans, we just have to have enough, just a little evidence, just a little hint. And we go, yeah, I'm going with that. I'm not going to wear a helmet when I drive in a car. Why? Because you could get in an accident and your helmet could get caught on the something or other, and I don't want to die in a fiery. What? That doesn't even make sense. It makes enough sense that I'm going with it. And so people can base their life on little slivers of evidence. And that's why they wear the mask. Yeah, got to wear the mask, got to keep people safe. That's why they don't wear the helmet. Or that's why they don't buckle up, because they've got these beliefs. So it's not a small thing I'm talking about. This is how we organize our whole life. But what is important to me, fundamental, believe whatever you want and understand that's between you and God. So it's Article Faith 11, and I'll just cite that as I let you go. We claim, who? Jonathan and Greg, to worship Almighty God according to the dictates of our personal conscience, and allow and suggest all men do the same. Let them worship how, where, or what they may. And then hashtag hear him. Do whatever Jesus tells you to do, because we're both like, ultimately, you're not going to have a good life unless you give it up. And you do things that, yeah, your carnal self, who's an enemy to God, doesn't want to do. You've got to give it up and then do what this invisible God tells you to do. And then that would just like, well, then I would have to hear him. Bing, hashtag hear him. And then that's the resolve for me, is like, so I'm not, I'm very liberal in my beliefs. Like there's a lot of stuff I believe that are probably wrong. Like Jesus has this television station. Well, that could be wrong. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe that's just Jonathan and Greg, desperate souls. Like, oh, but I believe it. And I would give up very much for it. And I have. I already have. I am today. There's a lot of other things that the world regard as important that I hear Jesus like, no, this is for real, Greg. You build it. I'll say, okay, you know how broken I am and how broken Jonathan is. But that's me hearing Obi Kenobi's voice saying, it's not going to be run the normal way. You guys are just starting out. Do it this way. So, okay, back to you.
Well, I think that the reason I mention it is just the fact that as you know, I'm always thinking about kind of everybody, because it feels like that's who I'm talking to. And they always say you should narrow your audience, and it's like I can't do it. It's like because I think in terms of everybody, like people of all different views, and I think the reason that that I love that you mentioned Luke Skywalker is because it's something we all have in common.
Yeah.
It's like where does the modern man worship? In the movie theater.
Right. You got it.
So here we go. So
Yeah.
so Luke Skywalker, it's like Luke Skywalker. I had forgotten that part of it where he's got the things on and he's going and he's trying, you know, and he tears them off because he realizes that his spiritual sense, his intuitive sense, the Force, was more keen and precise. It was better than the goggles, and that's I don't think that there was anything. I don't think you could get any closer to a perfect description of what I was trying to get at with this poem. In a sense, is that it's like the modern world is a mimic, an increasingly precise mimic of heaven, of the other side. Like if you watch near-death experiences, like I've watched them on YouTube a while. I got, you know, I read books a couple books, you know, years ago when I was younger, and then recently I had kind of a desire to go back and watch some experiences on YouTube, and I did, and it's fascinating. Watch what people talk about when they talk about going to the other side. It's like obviously, you know, like you can't. I think what we have in this world is a probably faint comparison to what that is. But the idea again is it's like thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. So, you know, that people talk about going to the other side and how like they can experience like everything all at once. It's like they experience like lots of things at once. They talk about how they can see things like that are not directly before their eyes. And we know that this happens in this life. Like people will talk about if they have an experience where like they get in a car accident and like whoa, like time will slow right down to like you know, I've heard some of these stories. People talk about how, you know, like, and I've experienced it a couple times when I was in close danger or something like that, where it was like everything slowed way down. I remember there was once, but I can't remember what the circumstance was, but I remember there was once that happened. And so like we kind of know, and even science is showing that like time is this kind of like, we don't really have our fingers on time, and time changes everything. Like if time changes, if it's flexible, then it just completely blows like lots of our paradigms. And so like I love that you mentioned this thing about Luke. Now here's the fascinating thing about, you think about Luke Skywalker and the Jedi, okay? And it's fascinating to me that it's like we live in a society that has much of the story structures since the release of the first Star Wars movie. Many of the story structures have mimicked the Star Wars structure, or the Star Wars, not the structure, but the themes within Star Wars. Why? Because it was something that where it was a mesh of the spiritual and the temporal. It was all about where the spiritual and the temporal meet, and the Jedi were these guys in whom met the spiritual and the physical. So it's like if you are a young man, let's say today, and you got a lot of testosterone, and you want to be like that, it's like everybody's watching superhero movies now. I don't think they do a very good job. I've watched a couple of them. The story structures are all, I don't know, at least the ones I've seen. It's like they don't have much as far as the story goes. But the point being is it's like if you want to be that, then it's like, what do you want to be? You want to be a Jedi. You want to be a Jedi. It's like you don't want to be dependent on this. That's where we're going, right? Like the new video games. Like, man, I can have sex with any girl I want, It's like, yeah, where does that lead? That leads you to be dependent. Like, it's like you can't go anywhere without, and we see that today. It's so sad, like these kids, it's like, I can't be away from the television for very long because I got to play my video game. It's like, is that what you want? It's like, no, that's not what we want. What we want is we want to be the Jedi. It's like to have, like you talk about, it's like a spiritual technology. So you talk about, okay, well, how do you develop this spiritual technology? Well, the fascinating thing about it is it comes through practice. So you look at, Star Wars, and here's Luke, and he's, all these hours with Yoda in the swamp, It's like, oh man, that story's so like it's not a perfect story, but it's like it's got some good stuff in it. It's like he's in the swamp. Like, this is how it happens. People don't get it. It's like it's in the swamp. It's like it's in the swamps of life. He's in the swamp, and there he is, and he's practicing, and he's lifting Yoda, and then he tells him, doesn't he tell him to like lift the spaceship out of the mud, and then Yoda has to do it for him and stuff. And it's like, and he's learning that it doesn't matter the size. It's the belief. It's the belief. It's like, I'm sorry, this is the new technology. It is. I get so passionate about this because I just don't, it's like the earlier people adopt it, the better. This is the new technology. Okay. It's faith. Have you seen Wim Hof?
No.
Okay. So Wim Hof is this guy, they call him the Iceman. And years ago, when he was like 17, 18 years old, he was seeking for enlightenment, reading all the ancient Eastern texts about how to find enlightenment, and this deep presence in the now and deep awareness and being very present. And one day, because he lives in Norway, it's not hard to find ice. And so he's walking down the road, and there's this lake with it's not fully frozen over. There's just floating pieces of ice in the lake. And he just feels drawn to this ice water. And so he just walked in, he just walked in, and he said immediately, he became totally present, and he was hooked. Okay. And so like, and then he would practice, how long can I stay in a tub of ice water? To where now, like he has, I think 26, last I knew, 26 world records of his ability to endure cold. And so how did that come? It came through practice. And he said this fascinating thing. He said that when he went into the water, he says what happens is like, it comes like a force, like this feeling like you can't do this, or like, cold, like you can't do this, and I'm going to kill you, is the way that the cold is, right? I'm going to kill you. And you meet it with what? Faith. No, I'm just fine. So what they've shown with Wim is fascinating. They've shown that he can endure colds which are impossible for the body to endure. And you know what impossible means? All impossible means is that the scientists have not yet recorded an instance of somebody doing it. That's what impossible means.
Right, right.
The 4 minute mile, it was impossible. They said there were scientists saying it is impossible for the human frame to run a 4 minute mile. And then a guy broke it. I can't remember when it was, 1950, 60, 70, something like that. And then like after that, the next year, like somebody broke it.
Yep.
Boom, 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 boom. And it's like, we don't know what is possible through faith.
And so let me say something that segues off of what you're talking about. So one of the things Jonathan has pointed out is about practice, and that's what it's about. So Jesus was kind of clear on this. He called his followers disciples, and the root word there, of course, is discipline. And that the scriptures are kind of clear that Jesus himself developed discipline, that he learned grace by grace, and that he acquired these technologies sequentially, and that he received them from his Father as they were needed. And so when you look at what my mission, probably Jonathan's mission as well, we're practicing. So really you say, what's this television program? Well, Jonathan just touched upon it. So when I got born again in 2015, Jesus said that I would build this thing. It has many different names, but it's basically designed to retrain my mind and heart so that I'm focused upon infinite things, not finite. So I live in a world that is one of the best training facilities ever. It's called U.S. Antichrist, All Is Well in Zion, Babylon cult culture. It's the culture that we are now in. Probably never been a better culture throughout all time in history. If you wanted to focus like a laser beam, if you wanted to, upon money and carnal pursuits, sex, money, security, carnal security, so that you're taken care of. And so we have whole systems designed to keep you alive as long as possible. Wear the mask, follow the science, and we've got scientists. This whole thing is designed to train a whole generation and many generations to be focused on the here and now, and not in a meditative way, but more like in a carnal way that excludes that other voice. Be it Obi-Wan Kenobi or Jesus. No, don't listen to that. You don't need that. What you need is some more of this, whatever. And so they have answers, and often those answers are fundamentally tied to one thing. It's money. Money's an approximation of carnal security. It's a symbol people widely recognize, and then you can trade in all the other different securities. If you want hog jaws, give us enough money, we'll give you hog jaws. If you want some iron beams, just give us some money. Yes, that's right. Oh, it seems like everything has one thing in common. If I have money, I can pretty much get whatever I need. That's correct, except for the infinite things, because you have to choose how long halt you between two opinions. Well, our society is not halting. It's going headlong. I'm not halting at all. I've decided it's all about the bottom line. And so you're not going to get Jedi training of the sort that makes you hear from the other voices. Now, we have religious institutions that are focused on that. We have individuals who are focused on that, but it's kind of a hodgepodge. So when I got born again, Jesus said, you're going to help me create formal systems in the informal scene. So it's called the manger scene. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess that kind of explains why you had me get a PhD and do all this geeky intellectual stuff. And it has, because I can hear him and like, okay, you want me to build that? And so building a TV station, he didn't give me much to go on, but I'm like, okay, what is TV? Camera, people talking, Mr. Rogers. Okay, we can do that. Boom, here we go. But what was all the purpose? Well, the underlying purpose in 2015, he talked to me, and he has ever since, about how we've been trained, that our situation is very awful because the people, including myself, and not been able to hear the other voices. It's too loud. You're not trained at turning your hearts and trusting, because it's one thing to hear them, but can you trust the invisible thing, especially in light of the fact that you've got this thing and it's always worked, okay? And you're like, why would I trust something that I've never done before? Like Jonathan says, it's impossible. Well, that's why we have the scriptures to say, well, it's not completely impossible. It has been done before. And if you can believe that eons ago, people, or many centuries ago, people did this kind of thing. They gave up their life and they risked it all on the unseen being. And so that's that's Jesus. That's too hard. He says, not if you'll train yourself. So he's training me and he's setting up training protocols. So what Jonathan and I are doing, so like, well, how does this fit into the training thing you're doing, Greg? This training system. He told me that you would have to practice prophecy. If you want the gift of prophecy, you have to prophesy. If you want to learn how to play the guitar, guess what you do? You play the guitar. Well, can't I just read books about playing the guitar? Sure you can. You can draw near with your lips, but your fingers and your mind will be far from learning the guitar until you actually get the guitar and spend many hours. You spend many hours on the guitar every day, you're going to get good. I know that because I play the guitar and I've never spent hours and hours, but the people who are good at the guitar, they do. So what if I wanted to get good at prophecy? What would I do? Well, one, you might identify prophecy. So I've studied the scriptures a lot. Those are apparently prophecies, and I've done that throughout my life. But there's been other things Jesus has used that are prophetic. And so he's showing me this wide range. And so one of those was your poems, Jonathan. I start looking at these poems and I'm blown away. And why? Because I was trained to see prophecy. I'm like, oh, and what did I see? So when I saw your poems, I saw in your poems the same things that Jesus, an invisible being, had been telling me. And so I'm like, whoa, saying the same things. And then when our friend got on, Lyman saw this, it was the same thing. He's like, oh, and what did he see? He started seeing a correlation. And that's when you go like, oh, they also are listening, because you're being told things that are not in sometimes religious texts. You're being told things that are maybe very current. You're being told things in a certain way that, yeah, you could kind of infer those maybe from something a religious person, but some of them, not at all. That's not being said within religious circles. That's very unique. No one's emphasizing that like that. And so then you start picking up on these. And so I just want to I'll summarize to say, and to point out to our viewers, from my perspective and my mission, my hero's journey, if you will, what Jesus is doing with me, I call it my Jesus story. What Jonathan and I are doing, why I have an interest, is because I'm practicing something. I seek a gift. I seek to know what's in the future, not by becoming an economic person or economist or becoming a historian. Those are good for seeing the future. Those are great things God has given us. But I don't study those. I study his words to me and his words to other people that are kind of prophetic. They're not, Jonathan didn't say, I'm a historian and this is how I decide what's going to happen in the future. No, Jonathan just lays down poetry, and he didn't say, I'm going to now share some poems that are prophetic. He didn't say that. Well, then how did I ever decide that those were prophetic? I'll tell you, I'm in school of the prophets. I am a small p prophet. That means I can prophesy. I can read God's mind. So if you think, oh, that's kind of heady stuff. You're saying you're a prophet? I just told you, and when I say you, every listener, you can read God's mind. Do you go around and tout that? Because it'll sound a little whack, but I'm telling you what, doctrinally, it'll be fully true. So get over different and get over, oh, he says he's this or that. What you do is you listen to other people's prophecies and you prophesy yourself, because here's what God told me. Here's where we're going. We will be thinking of Christ more. We will be preaching of Christ more. We will be prophesying of Christ more. and we will be writing the things that we prophesy so that later, or even now, our children might know to what source they may look for remission of their sins. That's a prophecy that was given in the Book of Mormon anciently, and it told about a culture that we don't have. It's a culture where they think about Christ, talk about Christ, preach about Christ, prophesy about Christ. They do so many things with Christ, and that's where their center is. They're centered in Christ. And it is, and this is why prophecy is so important, because Jesus Christ, the testimony of Jesus Christ, is the spirit of prophecy. It's the spirit of what is to come. So your poem, when you notice how it started out, I like to kind of start out like a mystery, because it doesn't tell you what it is. It says, we thought that we could find it by looking back, but we cannot. It lies in the future. Well, guess what the prophecy is about? The future. It also prophesies. You can prophesy about the past too and do correlations, but that's what that is. And I'm kind of bold. God has made me bold. He said, go bold before men, humble before God. So I am. So I'm very blatant, like, hey, Jonathan, you've got prophecy here. Well, Jonathan didn't back off. He's on a television program called Poetry and Prophecy. So it's not like he didn't know what was coming and how Greg is framing this, how Jesus is framing this. But that's what I wanted to bring to our discussion, is the fact that these technologies, one of the prime technologies we're going to need and our children are going to need is that ability that is called prophecy, to be able to prophesy. And one of the things, and so I like that our episode started with kind of, or not started, but involved Jonathan say, well, I disagree with this. Let me tell you why. Then you got my response. That is where we're headed. We're headed to a culture, because people are like, oh, now if it's going to be prophecy, we need to kind of keep it within the bounds, because people could get off course. They're getting off course without us prophesying. That the fact is, we need more people to prophesy, more people to strive hearing God and then telling what they believe, because that's all I'm doing. That's what Jonathan's doing. Here's what I believe that Spirit's telling me. And then each individual hearer has to judge that. And so discerning of spirits becomes huge. Where we're going, being able to hear God and be able to discern, because you're not only deciding whether it's true or not, you're having to decide, is that for me or not? Because you can have something that's true, but you're the one person in the whole world. God says, yeah, everybody's going to do that, but not you. You're going to go take showers in there, which are actually gas showers. Like, oh, wow, that's weird. And people aren't going to understand, but I guess I'll stay in Germany and I'll take these two little kids to comfort them as I go take showers. That kind of defies what most people think God would do to a Jew. They just got in unusual and unfortunate circumstances. No, they got in a completely designed circumstance. God is good. God is kind. He wants these two little Jewish children, to go to the other side comforted by an adult who it's time for them to come home. And so that takes a high level, and Jesus is kind. So you don't even have to be a prophet or prophesy or practice this stuff unless he tells you to. Just walk forward. He'll eventually have you work on all the disciplines, all the gifts, because everything he has is available. And so I'm sharing this long thing to say, it's a good time for me to say what this whole thing is about. Like, if you see me, this is episode 8. And if we're on episode 58, it'll be the same thing. What are you doing here, Greg? I'm at the gym. The gym? That doesn't look like Gold's Gym. You guys don't look like you're working out. We're working out. This is how you work out. Work out what? This is how you practice prophesying. You talk of Christ. And if you keep talking to Christ, you know what his spirit is? It's the spirit of prophecy. Eventually, you'll start saying things that are from another world. And it would be the same if does the devil prophesy? Yeah, he prophesies. He's got to kind of know the future himself so he can decide, okay, is that somebody that I've already got? And so you start talking devil talk, other spirits can inform you. Now, they'll deceive you because he's a lover of a lie. Unfortunately, you're worshiping a boss who just loves a lie, and he loves telling a lie. Well, I've been faithful to you, Lucifer. Why would you? Because I love lies. Woo, taking you down. But God doesn't. And so God will tell you stuff, and sometimes you'll be in an awkward place because he'll only tell you part stuff. Because like Jonathan, I can't tell you when this big old thing's coming down that you all know. I love that you said that, Jonathan. Like they already know. They don't need a prophet telling them, hey, you guys know this is coming down, because I already checked that. I've never met a person who doesn't know our economy is going to fall big time. Never one. I've found a lot of people who, yeah, I'm not supposed to go to the LDS church. They'll tell me that, like, yeah, no, God's not having me do that. But do you know that the economy is going to fall? Great will be the fall. They answer yes. I don't even care if they're churchgoers or prayers. They know. And so God is kind of like beating the dead horse when he sends street preachers out going, hey, the end is near. and that's why they beat the prophets or kill them, because we already know that. They don't want to admit that, but it's like, quit saying that. It scares us. We are trying to ignore that, and because you're like a party pooper. You're like at a beer party saying, you guys could all become alcoholics, but go ahead and have a good drink. You're a party pooper. Get out of our party. Why? Because I'm just telling you guys that you're increasing your chances of getting in a wreck. When you leave this party, you could kill little kids and you could hurt yourself and you wouldn't be with your family. Shuddy, we're having a party. We're eating, drinking, be merry. Get out. Well, I was just trying to help, and so prophets are party poopers is what they are, but Jesus sends them. So we are. Okay. Sorry, that was a long stick.
Okay.
Long stick goes
Good.
boom.
Good. No, it's the funny thing is, like, before I go back to the other thing, just it's a small thing in a sense. It's like it's like, thinking back about the Jedi, it's like how many things kind of have to come together to be able to be at peace in any situation. It's like, well, a lot of things have to come together. And it's like, what is the person with a testimony of Christ, who, yes, the what does it say? The testimony of Christ is the spirit of prophecy. But yes, that's an important part of it, because it's like, sometimes the only way you can get through your cross is to just know how it's going to end and to accept that, or if it's a difficult end, or to rejoice in your deliverance, which is coming. It's like, it's a small thing. I don't want to say it's a small thing, because all the gifts of the Spirit or of God are they're big. They're this massive blessing, and they give you such an advantage and a blessing over. I mean, you think about the idea of the Jedi. It's like the Jedi's were at such an advantage. I mean, it's of course it's unreal. It's like they're coming at him with tasers. And he's deflecting all that. It's like they had these gifts that were big, but at the same time, it's like it's you come to see that it's a small thing, and it doesn't. It's like everybody. It's like, and one way that I think about it is that it's like the past is set because it's over, and the future is also just as set as the past. Now, the reason that it's set is because it's set by us in part. It's set by other factors. It's set by choices which we've not yet made, but which we will make. And so it's not this huge thing to. It's like, it's a real gift when you meet a beautiful historian, somebody who just loves history, and you can just sit and listen to him for hours. I do sometimes. It's just like, oh man, this is just beautiful, and how they've woven, all these little pieces of things they found together to make a story. Oh, it's just beautiful. Well, that's a gift. It's also a gift, like there's some people who just, they see clearly. It's like, and I don't know how it works. I don't know if it's that it's like, there's one level where it's like you look out in the world and you see this factor and that factor and the other factor, and it's like, and you're like, oh, well, this is how this is going to end, because I see these factors. And then there's sometimes an idea that'll come that makes no sense. It's like we did a little episode on Jordan Peterson's daughter, and how she was told this is going to last 2 years. She had no way of knowing that it was going to last 2 years. But the truth is the future was set just like the past. because of her choices, other people's choices, God somehow knew that it would be 2 years. And so, and he knew that that would give her the strength to do that. Now here's a weird thing. I want to go back for a second. I want to talk about
It would give her
practice.
the strength because she would know it's just last 2 years. If he had
Yes.
announced 10 years.
Well, that's what she kept saying to herself. It's just 2 years. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to clarify for
Yeah.
a viewer.
Right. So it gave her comfort because she knew it would last only 2 years. So it's like and it's not so unusual. It's like you don't have to be religious. People like this have experiences like this all the time. And if you can't see it, it's because you're not looking. It's like we live in the age of the internet. You know, it's like maybe the shows you're watching on YouTube aren't the same as mine. Just look it up. You will find thousands and thousands and thousands of people, religious and not, and spiritual and non-spiritual, you know, who will have premonitions about things that are going to come, and then they come to pass. It just is part of existence, and it's a gift. And you know what the fascinating thing about a gift is that gifts you did nothing to deserve. It's like a gift is a gift, right? So it's like you can't get up and say, I have this gift, so I'm better. No, it's like getting up and saying, you know, Daddy loves me better because he gave me this gift on Christmas Day. You know, it's like, no, he gave us all gifts. You know, it was a gift. You didn't do anything to deserve it. So these are all gifts, but they can also be, so we're talking about practice. Now, the fascinating thing about practice is that it's like you actually do have to practice. And so, for example, like if I want to be in alignment with the highest good for humanity, okay, well, maybe I can conceive in my mind, and maybe I've had a holy unseen spirit enter into my body and witness to me that Jesus is the Christ, and that and maybe that same feeling is kind of spoken in my heart and said that I believe maybe that he will speak to me. Okay, well, that's one thing. Maybe somebody else, it's like, you know, who knows the reason, you know, it's like maybe it's, but they can't conceive of that, but they can conceive that there is a higher power directing. They don't know what it is, you know. Okay, all they know is that it knows more than them.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like so those people too can begin to listen. Okay, so listen. You know, what's the key thing? Going back to Star Wars, it's like, you know, he has to learn to center, to get, you know, to bring his mind into one place, to believe in something that's impossible. It's impossible to lift Yoda and put him down over there, you know, but it's like, but he doesn't care if it's impossible. He's going to believe it. And all of those doubts, he's going to calm his mind so that those dissipate. And he's gonna believe. So for one thing, so you can believe in all sorts of things, but to believe in something that's good, that it is the highest good for all people, then you're going to need to be listening to a still small voice, to not to the clamoring voices, but the thing that is that when it speaks, you know, this is of God. This is of the highest source. This is of the source, if that's what you understand. You know, it's like, you know, and I'll just say this, there may be a bunch of Christians like, well, it's Christ. Why aren't you saying it's Christ? Because it's like, stop that. That's what I feel like saying when I hear that. It's like, will you stop it? Are you telling me you have Christ pinned down? Are you saying you know what if your belief is that he is the maker of the universe, are you saying you've got that pinned down? So it's like if somebody else, you know, it's like if you don't have it pinned down and you're still seeking to know Christ better, or seeking to know the divine better, just because you know his name doesn't mean you know him. I get a little passionate about that, but I that kind of mentality, you know, it's like, but give me anybody who's listening. and you will find a Jedi in the making, and it's not a Jedi that, like, it's like we watch these shows, it's like, boy, he got lots of glory and all the people cheered at the end. It's like, no, it's like it's something deeper than that. It's like to gain fans in the eternal world. It's like many of the people who were the real life Jedis of the history of the earth were very disliked by the people of this earth. And so like, part of becoming that is the ability to suffer well, which brings us back to suffer well again. But I wanted to say that, so I take forever to say anything. I wish I could talk faster, but first thing, be listening. Second thing, be humble, because you're going to get it wrong sometimes. You just absolutely are. You're going to think you're hearing the voice of God and the voice of the divine. You're going to act on it. And then if you're humble, the divine over a few times of doing it will say, good, good. I'm glad you've tried these things out. Let me show you how you were wrong. And it's like, oh, so to be humble. Number 3 is to act. Okay. So what this will ask us to do is to do hard things, which are our calling to do. There are people right now who are rowing a boat. I don't know this, but I've heard that there are people who have rowed a boat across the Atlantic. I can't even but and so here's the possibility. In that boat, you could say each of them is practicing a discipline, okay? But one of those people may be doing so because a still small voice, for whatever strange reason, it was important for them to do this thing. And they knew they had to do it. And it will serve them in the long run because it's somehow tied with their eternal nature, with what they're supposed to do in life, etc. And one person will be like that. And there'll be another guy in helping to row in the same boat who is running from the thing that he was asked to do back in New York City, where he's from. Okay, so you cannot judge by outward appearance. Just because someone's doing something hard doesn't mean it's like I love this. There was a story about a woman who joined one of these ashrams or something in India, and she's trying to meditate and get close to God and stuff. And the truth is she had family at home, and she could not meditate. It was darn near impossible. And I think finally whoever the Zen master was or whatever was like, I think you need, and it was like she was for her, she was running from something. But somebody else that was there, it was just a sacrifice. Maybe at home, it was like their family didn't agree with the fact that they went over there. And, but they knew that they were called to do it. And so that's why my website, is the Trackless Path. It's like, it's a trackless path. Only by the still small voice do we know whether the sacrifices. And I love this. So this is a Mormon scripture. If you're not Mormon, you can throw it out. That's fine. I don't care. But there's a scripture, I think, in the Doctrine and Covenants where it says something to the effect of, will I, the Lord, accept of a sacrifice which I have not appointed? It's something to that effect. And so it's like, we can't fool the infinite. Okay? And we need to make the sacrifices and as we make those sacrifices, it's like it's a terrible wrenching of the soul. And it's like we make those sacrifices. And the fascinating thing about that is that you become more and more attuned. It's like in the swamp. This is the perfect analogy. In the swamp, here's he as a Jedi. In the swamps of life, he's there and he's learning to listen, to focus upon the thing that is his calling in life. And so I think that the third thing I want to emphasize, that it's like you have to do something. Okay? It's not enough to just read and study these things or to listen to podcasts or whatever. It's like you've got to hear what that voice is telling you to do, that hard thing. And I love that Jordan Peterson says, like, look around and pick up something heavy and start to carry it. the only thing I would add to that is look around and pray and say, dear God, which heavy thing is it my responsibility to pick up and carry? Because you can pick up and carry a heavy burden, supposing the daughter of Jordan Peterson, suppose she'd been like, I'm out of here, when she was told to stay and take care of her parents. And she went down and she volunteered at the homeless shelter down in Texas, and she did all these wonderful things, and all of it would have been running from the thing that she was called to do. So this is how we will, like you talk about this technology and becoming this. It's like, how will heaven come on earth? It's in this way. I've got some more things, but I'll give you the talking stick for a minute and then I'll come back to it. So.
Yeah, so you were talking about ways to practice prophecy. So these are ways to hear God better. They were suggested by Moroni 10. And when you shall receive these things, if it be wisdom in God that you should receive them, I would ask that you would ponder them in your hearts, and remember how merciful the Lord hath been unto the children of men from the creation of Adam, down until the time ye shall receive these things, and ponder it in your hearts. And so God used that scripture when I was born again to start setting up this training facility. One of the things he said, you're going to work on your memory, Greg. You need to remember how I've been in your life. So one of the things that happens to us is we'll have spiritual experiences that are significant. They may be small by world standards, but they happen to us so that they are a significant thing, and can be honored. God says, acknowledge my hand in all things. So we don't have to. We can have these things and just say, that's synchronicity. Well, that's another name for a godly design thing, but yeah, you can dismiss it or you can treasure it. So God said I would have to treasure things that usually float by, that most people they'll have these experiences, but they don't write them down. They don't revisit them every day. So one of my disciplines is I have 12 memories, and he started with 12 of things that are miraculous that I've had in my life. And I go through them every day, generally, and I'll visit those and acknowledge his hand and say, and sometimes I'll say, you've blessed me because you did this. You blessed me because you did that. And I'll reflect on that. In those 12 memories, he'll cascade them. One memory can lead to other insights and so forth. So he'll use those to talk to me. But what those do is they reinforce your gift. So I talked with a professional artist one time. My wife does painting. Right now, she's doing a master copy right behind me in this other room. And so she's struggling to paint this painting that was done by a master. And hallelujah. So she's practicing. And she's painted before. So she raised kids, and she wasn't into painting for many years. And she was a sculptor before that. So this was new to her. So she's been developing a new career, which requires practice. And I talked to a professional, his name was Kim Baxter. And I told him, and he has much more experience than my wife. And I told him, I said, yeah, so my wife, when she does this plein air competition in our little town, we have a competition where you go stand outside and for the next 3 days you paint some paintings. And my wife finds it challenging. That she's like, oh, it just feels like I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, here you have somebody who's sold much work, and his comment, he said, I was talking with Randall Lake. This is another accomplished artist who makes a living off art and does wonderful work. Local, we have a lot of artists in our area. But he said, I talked with Randall about this, how it seems like, and both of us agree that any time, even though they have all this experience, when they start doing a painting, it's like they don't even know what they're doing. Like, oh.
Yeah, I totally get it. His writing is that way for me. Go ahead.
Is this going to turn out? And it feels like you're a novice again. Oh, where's all my learning? And so Nephi says that when he was traveling at the highest level with God, he traveled not knowing beforehand the things which he should do. So one of the things that Nephi, though, would do is he would reflect on the past. So our past We have past experience, and that's where we build trust with our spouses or whatever. We learn that things are reliable by going back and saying, oh, well, this has happened 5 times. It could happen a 6th time. And we have that experience. And sometimes the 6th time is way different than those 5, and that's surprise. But sometimes it's kind of much the same. You say, oh, and God did deliver me again. So Nephi looked back at how God had delivered the children of Israel through Moses, through the wilderness to the promised land. And he was trying to encourage his brothers who were on a similar trip with him and his family. And they're just complaining, but he was casting his mind back to when God had delivered his people, so wider, his tribe, like, no, he's done this before. And then he would liken himself. It's like, we are like them. So he was able to prophesy by looking at the past and going, it'll be like this, because he could see these markers. There are certain markers that he could see because he had been familiar with the scriptures, and he saw, oh, it's happened before. And then that gave him eyes to see what was happening to them even now. And even in the past, there were people during Moses's time that they didn't want to do the Moses trip thing. In fact, scholars estimate anywhere from 20 to 30% was all of the children of Israel that left Egypt. The rest stayed, like, now we're staying. And so Nephi's caught with some brothers who are like, oh, why did our father leave Jerusalem? We had all these resources back there. So he's got complainers, but he's comforted. And so, like, it happened before, and it's probably happening now. So you're trying to make sense of your life like that. My point here is a personal point for those who say, I want to practice some of the gifts of God. Well, one of the things is to honor what you've done before and what God has done. Have you ever heard God in any way before? Have you been guided? Have you had synchronicity? Well, call that Jesus, call that God, call that what you want, and say, I need to remember that, because you do, because I do. I mean, I feverishly gather those things, and I'll remember. And what I'm doing is I'm reinforcing what that's called is I'm teaching myself to believe, because I grew up in a society, U.S. Antichrist, Babylon, all is well in Zion culture that emphasized not believing in things like I say, in voices coming from a different realm. They're like, well, yeah, that's nice and all, but you can't trust that. And like, that's what I have to trust most now, because of where God is taking me. I'm in a precarious situation. And so it behooves me, says Jesus, that I create a very strong memory of what he's done in my life that can't be moved. Like, I know. So I've got certain things like that were miraculous, like far out miraculous. And I like, yep, I know you did that. And now I've noticed as he's taken me, I had miraculous experience yesterday. And I can trace back and go, oh, this is similar to that thing. And then I can see a pattern and go, yeah, it seems like anytime God wants me to do this thing, he'll do this thing. And yes, so then it actually is establishing a communication. God goes, hey, I think we got him. I think he understands that when I do this with him, that it's probably this. And so then I basically went on a trip yesterday and I saw the signs and I'm like, all right, God, you know, I'm going to just treat this like you just told me this, because it's so obvious. But it's only obvious because of what he's done in the past. So he will have certain communications, just like when you were a little kid, you learned when mom does this, it means this. You finally figured it out. And she may have had to repeat that many times. She's like, you're like, oh, well, that's what she wants me to do. Why didn't she say so? She was. And the same thing with God. So recollecting, so I'm going to wrap this up by saying Moroni 10 has been heavily emphasized. And if you go to that scripture, you're going to find why I'm emphasizing it now and why God emphasizes it to me. Because he goes on to talk about the gifts of the Spirit and how woeful our current situation, because he sees our day and he predicts it will be woeful, because it will be an unbelieving time where they do not believe in the gifts of the Spirit. Well, here's one of the underlying things of how the gifts of the Spirit work. Guess what you have to do? You have to believe. If you don't believe in the gifts of the Spirit, Why is God not talking to me in dreams? Do you believe God talks to people in dreams? No, my mom never got up
That's
and
it,
always
yeah.
shared her dreams with me. Okay, so pretty much if you were born in America, then dreams aren't going to work. Oh, that gift doesn't work. Right. But it only doesn't work for one reason. You're not looking for it to work. You're not believing it. You're not anticipating it because, and so all the gifts are based on belief. Yeah, go ahead.
And what I would just suggest, I mean, it's such a beautiful time. Just look around. The cool thing is that in the past, you could live in a community that was fairly, you know, just didn't believe, you know, and the community down the road might believe, but there was no connection. It's like nowadays there's no excuse. It's like, you know, you can connect to any community of people, and there are communities of people who are having these experiences. It's like if you can't see it, it's because you're not looking.
Yeah.
It's like
right.
it's so evident and blatant. And I'm encouraged for the time because like on the one hand it's the most wicked time, but I feel like the world is ripe for this because we're finally reaching the point where all of the institutions they haven't crumbled completely yet, but they're about to. All of our institutions, all. Sorry, I shouldn't overemphasize, but you know, it's like, but I was going to say on what you said, so you can remember the future. Now that may sound kind of strange to people, but that's actually kind of partly what we're talking about when we talk about the spirit of prophecy, and not the spirit of prophecy in the sense of being any great Moses, more just like the way that God speaks to us individually. So it's possible to remember the future, and that's the way that it feels. Okay, it's like a knowing comes, and oftentimes it's very personal, extremely personal. It's like there are certain knowings that I have about things that have been clearly made manifest to my heart and mind that I absolutely, like, I know it, I can bring it to my memory right now as clearly as I can remember what I had for breakfast. Okay, it's like, and they're not things in the past, they're things in the future. And you know, it makes it sound all great and glorious, but it's not anything that anybody, most of the things are things that other people don't need to know, but they're things that get me through every day, you know. And it can be as small as, you're going to get through this. But if you don't remind yourself of the time when in prayer or in a quiet moment you felt a divine influence come upon you and say, you'll get through this, you could forget that you'll get through this.
And without
So it's
vision,
possible
and without vision,
yes,
the people perish. So the spirit of
yeah,
prophecy is actually a spirit of hope. So you have
yes,
hope for
perfect,
something that is reasonable to hope. It's like, well, what reason do you have? Because I had this impression that was kind of otherworldly, and it was like a still small voice. That can actually be the only thing that gives you hope, but your hope is in Christ. In other words, it's in an infinite being that things will be okay.
yeah. Wow, that was perfect, the connection to hope. Without faith there can be no hope. Remember that scripture? Without
Yeah.
faith there can be no hope. So unless like you say, like, unless you believe that people have dreams, it's like you might have had a very influential dream, you know, that could have given you hope. But if you don't believe, if you have no faith, then it does you no good. You can have no hope.
Yeah,
So
and that's why God has me refer to U.S. Antichrist, all is well in Zion, Babylon, cult culture, is because it's a culture that's in many ways very sick spiritually. It hasn't emphasized things that our culture would call superstitious. Oh yeah, those people in Thailand, they believe in their dreams. Well, you know who else believes in dreams? Jesus. He talks to people in dreams often. That's how he communicates. You're like, well, how can you be sure of what he's saying? Oh, well, you're not in the realm of God if you're like using those words. How can I be sure? That's called carnal security. No, how can I believe So belief is the first principle of the gospel, not knowing stuff. That's a fruit that comes later. Yes, we have an obligation to turn all of our beliefs into knowledge, but that obligation is in conjunction or in covenant with God. He will dispense and he will give you the Holy Ghost. So they'll burn it. You're like, now I know of a surety. And I can tell you what, there's very few things I know of a surety. There's some things here and there, but it'd be hard for me to even distinguish them. What I do, though, that I like is I strongly believe things because I've had experience. So I strongly believe that a chiropractor helped my wife. Why? I saw it with my own eyes. I saw she was like laid up for about a year, really difficult circumstances that I saw with my eyes. By their fruits ye shall know them. I don't know what he did. It was really kind of wacky. Some of it, like I told him, I said, I don't know what you're doing here, but guess what? It worked. And I like results. And those are fruits, results, if you will. And that's what God has me hooked with. Okay. I don't understand how he does everything, but here's the thing. He gets results, the results I care about. And almost chief among those, peace that surpasses all understanding. I don't understand why I'm peaceful about this thing, but I feel like I don't have an enemy anymore. It's like, who's my enemy, Jesus? Like, well, you're going to find a lot of enemies, but he brings peace. Like, I don't have animosity towards people. I just let it go. And he's like, oh, you've gone all laissez-faire and limp. No, I still see things that are, unjust, but I give it up to Jesus. And so he's delivered that to me. I'm like, oh, I like that peace. And I see why people would pursue that, because it's kind of like what people are trying to pursue with money. They just want to have this wonderful time when you just relax and all your worries are behind you. Yeah, why don't you come to Las Vegas and do that? Yeah, what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. Oh, we had a good time. But I bet it wasn't peace that surpasses all understanding. No, we pretty much understand if you drink a lot of booze, you feel peaceful. Yep. And if you have sex with somebody, that's kind of fun too. So yeah, it's a peace that is understandable. In fact, you can put it on TV and people are like, I get it. I get why people would want to do that. Well, that doesn't surpass understanding. That's obvious why the carnal self would want to do that. What's not obvious is why a spirit would want to engage in such debauchery. Oh, well, don't get all religious on me. I won't. I'm getting all religious on Jesus. You can go ahead and do what you want, because there's different kingdoms, and that's going to be a beautiful kingdom. After you suffer after this life for 1,000 years, woo, you're going to enjoy whatever lower kingdom that is, if that's what you like. But anyhow, there we go. Resolve.
Well, I was going to say something about it, and then I have one other theme. I think I lost that piece of it. That's okay. Not important. So one couple concepts that I think are important. Number one, it's an old phrase that not everybody hears in the different denominations of people who believe different things, but well, actually they do amongst religious people. But for those who are not as religious, the idea of repentance is something that it's kind of an old idea. But it's kind of integral to all this. It's like it's like you kind of have to come to a conclusion that what you're doing isn't working, and that somehow a divine power can help you go from the place that's not working, going to Vegas and having sex with everybody, and and drinking and doing drugs and stuff. It's like, and that doesn't take too much. The cool thing about the world is that if we continue in another unpopular word, sin, if we continue in doing things that violate our conscience, eventually it gets to the point where life gets so miserable that you so often, it's very frequent that people want to get out, right? So it's like, yeah. And that's the gift. And if there's a hard time coming for the United States or for the world, then that's the gift. Is the blessing?
It's the
yes,
what you call the unmiracle. So the miracle, we usually the positive, but the unmiracle is the accompanying things that sets up the miracle. You're like, oh, we would never have spent so much time as a family if this COVID thing hasn't come. Well, that's the unmiracle. The unmiracle is called COVID. Not a really great thing, a dreadful thing. But the great thing is it started changing patterns for people. And it sets us up, by the way, for some wonderful things. So a lot more people are working from home. Well, that's good, because then they can work on the road when they lose their mortgages and so forth. I won't go down that prophecy road that Jesus called the mortgage prophecy, but he's going to release people from the pretend mortgages that I thought I owned my home. No, you just signed the document. You don't own the home. And then that releases their energy to focus on God. And they're like Indians. So yeah, you got to work 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, chop wood, carry water. But what are you going to do with the rest of the time? I don't know. I think we'll worship God. How are you going to do that? I don't know. If you're an Indian, maybe you just went sightseeing. Hey, let's go check out this. And some people, that's how they worship. You know, it's Sunday, and so we'll go up to the mountains. Good for them. And if that's where Jesus takes you, I approve of that message. But I do know there's higher ways, higher disciplines. And are you practicing prophecy? Like, no. Okay. Well, if Jesus doesn't put it in your heart, because that's what he always comforts my heart, Jonathan. Like, who's watching this with any degree of desire? I don't care. That's Jesus. I mean, I care about all of whatever Jesus's mechanisms. Yeah, I care about it theoretically, but I don't control that, nor do you. We are responsible for our own lives. And so you'll hear Jonathan and I talk about things and invite you to certain things with passion, and we have passionate, and that's good. But ultimately, both of us would say, no, do what God tells you to do. And he does have people like, just take it easy. Quit trying to work yourself to heaven. I am getting so tired of your sacrifice. They make me want to barf. I'm using a paraphrase, but basically that is scriptural. And he's like, oh, this is gross. You coming with your, oh, I'm going to do all these cool things for you, Jesus. And they're based on traditions, not on like what he's telling you to do. He hates them. And so he might say, why don't you first take a break from that? And then the funny thing is, he might call you back to it. Okay, now come back to it. And so that's the black sheep prophecy. There's a lot of people who were kicked out of church, or they were shown the door, and God's going to pour down his spirit. They're going to start loving Jesus. And then they're going to feel bad for the people who kicked them out. Like, oh, they need some love. And they'll go love on the people. And that's what I am. He didn't ever kick me out, or I didn't ever leave, I suppose. I didn't take the hint. People, get out of here, Greg. But he does say that that's what's coming. That's the thing I guess I look forward to most is the love that he's going to pour down upon his children. Some won't receive it. So those are prophecies that help me, Jonathan, deal with the inadequacies I would find in God. Like, God, it looks like actually very few people are trying to get a lot of Jesus like I'm doing. It's like, yeah, so what? Well, I thought you were God and you were going to do this great work. What did I tell you, Greg? You told me, and you said it throughout the scriptures, few be there that find it. Few that be there that find it interesting. Few be there that find it useful. Most people are going to say, I'm not using the force. Okay, I got the force. I got the force. I got this. And that's what they prefer. And so God has put it in my heart to be more and more comfortable with that and to celebrate it. I even go further and go, hey, if that's what you're doing, if you want to go to Vegas, go to Vegas. And I'm kind of with Jonathan. Maybe you need to go to Vegas and do some debauchery. I do not suggest it. God forbids it. But there's a part of me that's saying, go to, choose ye this day, go down there. Apparently, whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but that's a lie. You're going to Sinville. The devil loves a lie. So he's going to create a whole city dedicated to a lie. And so go taste that fruit. Let us know 5 or 10 years from now how that went for you. Oh, you won't need to tell us because we would predict if you keep going down that road, your life will bleed it. In fact, it probably already does. That's why the reason you've got a big hole in your life and you're trying to fill it. I need to have some fun, and it needs to be really edgy. And so I got nothing against Vegas because Jesus says, yeah, there's different kingdoms. Hey, if you want to go do Methville, want to go to rape camp, You want to go to Jesus camp? It's all available because Jesus put it there. I didn't. So don't blame me. Oh, who made this world? Not me. Jesus let it happen. Did he purpose it? No. Are you kidding me? No, he purposed this to have really great things. But he allows his kids, oh, what do you want? I want to have this place where I can go, where I can do debauchery and have no consequences. Okay, have fun with the devil, because he'll tell you that can be done. God will say, you can't do stuff with that like that without consequences. And so I'm here to testify. I already went to Vegas in my mind many times, so you don't have to feel dirtier than I am. Apparently, a man who looks on a woman to lust after her, he's already committed adultery in his heart. So I don't think you're going to do anything in Vegas that Jonathan and I didn't already do in our dirty, filthy, rotten, hard-hearted, hopeful hearts. But there is a difference. And so if you were thinking about Vegas, don't do it. That's it. I think about this sad girl in San Pete County. I just heard about her from somebody, but yeah, they went down to Vegas and they were swingers. And I just thought, oh my goodness. So they're swapping spouses. And what she was doing, it's like, that's just so weird. It's like, I wouldn't do that, but I could see like, oh, isn't there something intriguing about that? Oh yeah, all those things can be intriguing to our basest selves, but yeah, and murder would be interesting. Oh yeah, wouldn't that be interesting? I wouldn't want to do it, but it might be kind of interesting. Who's saying that? Right. So we all have dark places. Some people have none of that, I suppose. But yeah, this girl, I just saw like, and I don't know who she is, but I heard and I knew it was a true story. And I thought, I just felt so sorry for her, because it's like, what kind of marriage do you have where you just go down there and I can predict or prophesy that couple's probably not married anymore unless Jesus did a big old mighty work and a wonder in their life. Because and so, but I'm with you, Jonathan. Thank goodness there's a rock bottom. They don't just keep falling deeper and deeper. Their tissues will hit a limit where that's not even fun anymore. What? No, it always has to be fun. It's not. And because appetites will be satiated. You just can't keep having multiple orgasms. You can't just keep spending money. Well, what happened to all our money? I went to Vegas. God has put in limits because he loves his children. So eventually you will be near death. And then it's your choice if you want to die. And I'll finally say this, Jonathan, because it reminds me of what I was going to say to you. You were telling me one time that you were at such a difficult place where you're like, I don't think I can go on. And Jesus said, tell people that's a wonderful place and to go on. You're like, yeah, but I would die. Go on. What are you afraid of? Just go on. Yeah, but if I do one more thing, take it. And like, well, isn't that like suicide? It's like it, okay? And so is hospice, but it's not suicide. If you're taking steps, you're a pioneer. Like, I think if I actually keep going, what does the still small voice? So that's the only thing I'd say is if the still small voice says rest, then do that. But if the still small voice says move on, whoo, happy day. We have a pioneer song for that. And should we die before our journey's through, happy day, all is well. So it's not to make light of what position you were in there, Jonathan, because I shared this with my wife, who's expressed that a few times. I feel like I'm going to die. And I hear Jesus go, tell them to go for it, And then what will be disappointing? And I did it. Yeah, I went on, and then I went on, and then I went on, and you start realizing, I guess this body's a little stronger than what I thought. Crap. I had my story. If I take one more step, I'm going to die. Well, take it. Hurry. Okay. Well, if I take one more, and I take one more, it's been 2,000 steps since you said you were going to die. What's up with that? It's a story I wanted to tell myself how hard I am. And that's really what we try to tell ourselves, an empathetic story. I know I can't go on. Well then, ooh, good. You're in a good place. Like if I was 81 and say, if I try to get up and go to the bathroom one more time, I'm going to die. Well, guess what I'm going to do, Jonathan? Woo, I'm headed for the bathroom. Greg, it's like you want to die. Duh. But when I die and Jesus goes, what were you doing? I was going to the bathroom. Okay. I thought you were going to take a gun to your head. I wouldn't do that. But you knew when you went to the bathroom. I didn't know. I'm human. Okay. But I thought, maybe my heart's going to give out. But you did that with joy. It was the best bathroom run I ever made, Jesus, and it worked. And so, I'm opening my wife's paint thing. Talking stick, back to you, I guess, last talking stick.
The interesting thing, I feel hopeful about. I feel hopeful about what's coming, and I'll just give a reason for it. And then I think we've kind of covered the rest of the poem. So I'll look back at it just to make sure here in a second. But what I was going to say is that it almost feels like we're at a perfect time. And though I don't know if, I think we're at a perfect time. That's the way it feels to me. But it may be that I see something that's, we're not quite there. It's like, but I can see that all the elements are there. Because for one thing, I think we do have a lot of pain ahead of us. And that there'll be a lot of sadness and grief through that. But I think that many people already are close to this. And I think in a lot of ways, my message, and it's like maybe this is why God has kind of led me to a place where it feels like I'm on the outside of everything, is because I look at so much of this stuff really practically. It's like I don't really think of it the way I used to, which was more religiously, you could say. It's like where, tell me that's not a call. Thank goodness. All right, take care of that in a minute. So I don't really look at it religiously quite so much anymore. Like I used to think it's like, oh, I want to get close to God. I want to get close to God. And then it's like, and you feel like you're getting closer and closer. And then like when he pops in your life in a major way, like it's like, you don't realize how that turns your life upside down. And then you're like, whoa. And it's a different perspective. It's like, and so I see something from the outside, and I'm trying to say this in the right way, but it's like, there's a lot of people who don't accept a lot of the stuff we're talking about because it's just too religious. It's just too like mamsy-pamsy, it's like they can't see how it applies to everyday life. But most of those people think it would be cool to be Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
And it's like it's like I feel like in my heart, what is in my heart is that this is a good way to live. Like I love gifts that allow me to navigate, because there's been so many times where I didn't know what was up and what was down.
Yeah.
And so it's like a lot of these things, and like we'll talk more in other episodes, and maybe on the one that I'm going to start doing, I'll talk more about it, but talk about economics. Like I love what's coming economically. Like if you think that Babylon, like you call it Babylon Antichrist, culture. If you think that's cool, like you have no idea what's coming. And I don't mean like it's going to be cool, like everybody playing harps and and it's like, yes, actually there is that, but it works so much better, Greg. It works so much better than this, and it will bring you so much that's both temporal and spiritual gifts, and peace of mind and financial security. Like if you want real financial security, and so it's like these principles. It's like I've told you, I feel like my calling kind of is to the world, because it's like most of the time, the world is like on your thing, it says, show me the money,
Yeah.
the Jerry Maguire thing. It's like the world is like, show me the money. And it's like, that's why they don't like religious people. It's like, one guy called it Jesus smuggling. Every time you talk to a Jesus freak, they're always smuggling Jesus in there. And it's like, the reason is because they're like, tell me something that works. And it's like what people will find in the next few decades, few centuries, is they're going to discover that this way that we're talking about, like, it works and it fixes everything. And I wanted to share one last thing about gold and inflation.
Good. Then I've got other things to share. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, you do? Okay, I'll be quick. Um, so you talked about, they said gold isn't doing the same thing it was, and how inflation, and the other thing that I was going to say is inflation is not doing the same thing it has been. Like they've been saying, we're gonna run away inflation forever, and it's just kind of barely starting now. It's like, I kind of laugh because, it's like I see so many people that are all upset because, like gas doubled. It's like, that's nothing. That's nothing compared to what inflation can do.
Yeah.
Like runaway inflation. It's like,
yeah.
It's like, this is absolutely nothing,
No.
in comparison to what it could do. And the truth is it's like when they started blowing all that money out, our ancestors just 50 years ago or 75 years ago, every store owner in America would have doubled their prices overnight when they started doing that. Every store owner in America, every farmer in America would have doubled his prices overnight. But it's like the cognition of the world has changed. So the reason why these things aren't going the way they are is because, and this is the cool thing, Greg, is because we now have a culture and a generation of people who believes in miracles. Now that may sound strange, but we have a group of people on the planet who believe that food comes from grocery stores and it comes to you in a bag. It's like we've come to believe in this system that just runs, and it doesn't matter how much money you print. It doesn't matter. So why would I inflate it? And the truth is what I think. I think they're more right. They're more right. That's why I say this whole poem was like, we can't look back.
Yeah.
It's like, why not? Why not? If today they print twice as much money as there ever was before, and we should double, the inflation overnight. Why not still give that poor lady that just came in to get food for her kids? Why not just give it to her at the same price as yesterday?
Right.
Why not? Why not? Because we live in a world where we just believe that everything's going to be okay and that there'll be, and it's like, and yes, there's a crash coming, but it's not going to be as bad as we think it could be, because people have been conditioned to believe in things they can't see. They've been conditioned that there's no scarcity. Like, and you don't understand how this is preparatory to what's coming, because it's a world where you believe in things you can't see. They just believe that everything's going to be okay. That's perfect, Greg. It's like the reason why gold isn't going up like it used to is because people don't think the way they used to. The reason that inflation isn't going out of haywire is because people don't think the way they used to. And this is kind of good in a way.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, because I see what you're saying. That we live in miraculous times. People recognize that, and so the human conscience believes in things that are fantastic. We don't understand them all. How these networks, because we're used to things that are more hands-on. Well, I've got my garden out there. I know how a tomato comes, but now it comes magically. Is that from Chile or from Mexico or from Venezuela or wherever? So, okay, I'm just gonna force in this, and I feel like it's forced because I'm gonna go pretty fast.
Okay.
But I feel
I have to finish pretty soon because I got to do something for work. Go ahead.
But I feel inclined to share these thoughts that I had prepared relative to your poem. So, And here's that. The tie-in I'll just worry about later. So your poem prophesies towards what's coming and how it's received. So part of the thing is why we have to have the great dreadful day of the Lord is because we won't move as humans, usually unless there's dire energy. Am I going to die? Well, no, you're not going to die. Okay, then I'll just keep eating the way I am, blah, blah, blah. And so here's a quote by Brigham Young, I think it is. And so we have Zion and Babylon. Oh, this is, I think, Hugh Nibley quoting, and then
This is good.
quoting Brigham Young. And so we have Zion and Babylon, and never the twain shall meet. That is, they wouldn't if we did not take human nature into account. For how many humans have ever succeeded in renouncing the world completely? The separation of the saints from the world was, in most cases, not a matter of choice. It was forced on them. God is constantly driving wedges between the church and the world, or in Brigham Young's vivid terms, there are always cats coming out of the bag to put us at odds with the world, whether we want it that way or not. The brethren and sisters came across the plains because they could not stay. That is the secret of the movement. Do you think we came here of our own choice? He's talking about Salt Lake, Utah territories. Do you think we came here of our own choice? No, we would have stayed in those rich valleys and prairies back yonder, back in Nauvoo, Illinois, when the first revelation was given to prepare for Zion by the gathering of Israel. When the people came to Jackson County, they were as far from believing and obeying that revelation. Oh, next one. They were as far from believing and obeying that revelation as the East is from the West. And so we have got to continue to labor, fight, toil, counsel, exercise faith, ask God over and over, and have been praying for 30 odd years for that which we might have received and accomplished in 1 year. That complete break with this between the saints and the world that must precede the coming of Zion has not yet taken place. So God does his work sometimes by setting a wedge. He will separate you from the world. So sometimes you just wait for God to separate you. And it might be the waiting that actually participates. Like, if I hadn't waited, then this wedge wouldn't be as hard, right? Okay, so the next thing I want to share is a slide. So this is a movie slideshow. I'm going to share my screen, see if you can see it, Jonathan. Let's see, is that the one right here? Okay, share. Tell me if you can see this, Jonathan. You see that?
Yeah, no, we can.
All right, so I'm going to go through this quickly, and then I'll just tie it into the poem. We'll be done. This is a movie Jesus had me make. I just read to you the stuff in the blue. And I will put this link to this slideshow on the comments when I put this on YouTube and on Facebook. So somebody says, I want to actually go through that myself because Greg went through it fast. And this is God talking to me. I, like my I, get ready to die. So you've heard Jesus say, pluck out your eye if it offends you. So this is my message to myself, and it's God's message to me. I get ready to die. And so that is a message to me as I travel with Jesus. So this, what I'm about to share with you is a pathway. When Jesus says, follow me, he's actually taking you to a pathway, and you're actually on a pathway, whether you know it or not, even now. And this little thing says, excuse me, I'm becoming venom intolerant. So what's happened as a metaphor, remember the children of Israel got bit by snakes? Well, at some point, getting bit by snakes starts bothering your system. And people say, well, what are you talking about? If I got bit by a rattler, it would kill me. Well, what's happened is, in a parable way, is that we have grown up in U.S. Antichrist, Babylon, all is well in Zion culture. Our parents were venom tolerant. They could be bit by snakes, by very vile stuff, and it not kill them spiritually. But what's going to happen is the world just doesn't get more evil. That God sends down spirits, and he sends down his spirit that is intolerant of venom. And what, of course, the venom in this case is the lies of the devil and what we've received before, the things that are not good for us. So venom's no. And so this says no more snake bite. So these are kind of poetic, prophetic ways in which Jesus speaks to me that I use for Jesus street preaching to talk about, because I will use those words out on the streets when he tells me to, and I'll say, you're all snake bit like me. You've been bit. We are snake bit, and we need to look to Christ. So I'm referencing back to a scripture, and then I also tell them to pluck out their eye. So that slide you can treat separately. This is the thing I wanted to share with you most. So is to introduce people to what's called a divine chicane. A divine chicane. A chicane is a serpentine curve in a road added by design rather than dictated by geography. So most people by now have gone through what's called a circle, like when they drive their car. I don't know what they call those, but basically they create this circle instead of a four-way stop. They have a circle. And that's like a chicane where they put a serpentine, or in this case, a circle, and it makes cars slow down. Whether I guess you could go right through and you just have a wreck because you're going to hit the median, which is a circle. And so, but there's car designers who will actually put and population designers who will create roads that have turns, not dictated by, oh, we're following a river, but following a design that wants the drivers to slow down or pay attention to something. And so this is what Jesus has. You see the serpent up there. It's a serpentine path. And they were to look up and they would see God. So I could put you on a road and I say, I want you to look to your right. Well, one way I get you to look to your right is I can make sure that road turns to the right. And you're like, oh, what do you see? I can't help it, but I see a temple. Yeah, that's right. So sometimes our church will go put temples right there on the highway. So you can't miss it. Like, did you guys miss us? How can I? About just blown away. Washington, D.C. is one of those at night. It's like, boom, it's just so bright and glorious. And some people complain, but others think it's fun because it becomes a landmark. Yeah, it's by the Mormon temple is what they'll say. So chicane, it's designed to give you a certain experience. Okay, now you're going to learn about a word you never had. This is a hidden treasure. Divine chicane. So we combine the word divine and chicane. Divine is a series of people, places, and events and circumstances or things added to your life by Jesus, his angels, and yourself. And so God, this is a way to look at your life, but also your path with Christ, that he will design it. So you've heard people talk about creation and intelligent design. And that's the idea that God took this world and he formed it in a certain way that it would be pleasing for him, his children and so forth, and would give them experiences. So he probably stuck some dinosaurs in there, whatever, to blow their minds. Like, oh, how are we going to explain these? But it's the idea that it was intelligently designed. Well, that's the assumption that God wants me to have about my life, that when you find yourself like yesterday, driving like an hour and a half to meet this woman, it's like, what am I doing here? And I just followed it, and it led me here, there. It was like a serpentine path, and I invited my wife, and I just had to stay in communication. Like, what do you want me to learn here, God? And then I learned things along the way, and there's much more to learn about that particular trip. I won't go into it, but what I had to realize is, because it was kind of messy, I'm like, wow, this didn't turn out like I thought it was supposed to. So God is in this storm is actually the actual words that Joseph Smith spoke when God said, hey, go back to Missouri. The Missourians took your homes. I want you to march back there with an army. This is what's called in our Mormon history, it's called our Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints history, it's called Zion's March. And Joseph Smith, along with a bunch of other men, some old, some young, they were headed back, kind of like a militia, to go get their homes. And that's what their intent was. And that's what God told them to do. Well, they got almost there, and the bad guys were going to come, some Missourians, so to speak, bad guys, who go, yeah, we're going to go kill those Mormon guys. But a storm came up. Interesting, right? And And when the storm came up, basically the foes did not meet as planned. And Joseph Smith declared, God is in this storm. So another way to look at that is like it's an obstacle course. God set up an obstacle course, but it's a special one where you can learn things. And so you see this next slide up here, dictated not by chance, but by design, by divine design for the purpose of retraining you to receive more Jesus. So like what is, if we were on an obstacle course, when you left your mom's womb and it was an obstacle course, what is the purpose of this obstacle course? Well, God has been very clear. It's to learn to love God with all your might, mind, and strength. Or in other words, to become one with him. I call that, Jesus calls it getting more Jesus, more love of God inside you, the first commandment, and love of others, of course. Love Jesus more and more with Jesus. So why I'm sharing this, because this is a technology. This is part of my training to understand, because God has me building actual places that people can walk and go to, literal places they can walk and go to, but also online things like Jesus TV. It's part of a design, a chicane, a place they can go, because we talk about traveling on the internet. Hey, go to this website. Do you really go? Well, it's kind of like you're going somewhere, but the internet's going to change, and you'll actually have this more sense that you're actually flying, traveling a bit various ways, but it's the same thing. And they will be designed, some of them by the beast, to enforce your training to believe in carnal security. That's not a good idea, because it'll leave you fearful and underpowered, having to use crappy technology. But God is designing, and I'm here to tell you, he is designing, because I'm part of that designing. He has me, I'm doing it, a different kind of course, but it's one that's familiar to you, because he's created one for you. It's the divine chicane. You would call it, that's just my life, right? And it's your daily path. So here's then a graphic that shows this kind of graphically. We're headed for a place. Okay, Jesus says, Greg, your corrupt culture is structured to train you to self-reinforce a money-centric, carnal-centric version of reality. So the very reality that we have is by design. So as you travel down the road, imagine that you're going to travel a life road and somebody came before and they wanted you to see a certain reality. So they designed this thing not, here it comes, not as a Jesus-centric reality. They did not design the pathway you're going to travel to emphasize that. Jesus says, Greg, your corrupt culture has structured to train you to self-reinforce a money-centric, to focus on carnal-centric. So if I was driving in with the world, all the roads seem to lead the same place. All the answers are money or sex or carnal security. They're not like, get more Jesus. Listen to that still small voice. Okay, Greg, I'll help you build a chicane. So this is what Jesus says. And this is what's coming in the futures. God will start building very deliberately with people to train their own mind and heart. And so that's what he's doing with me. Mine's a prototype. Jesus says, I'm going to help you change the road you're on. There's still time to change the road you're on. So Greg, I'll help you build a chicane. So he's helping me build an obstacle course, if you will, a training course, just like a special forces would. So I travel that every day. And so Jesus says, one of those I'm traveling right now, Jesus TV. And Jesus reinforces there's still time to change the road you're on. That's a Led Zeppelin song, Stairway to Heaven reminder. Okay, and here's another graphic. Jesus reinforced. Do you see that divine chicane? Do you see how that road forces that green car? There you go. Well, and what's it forcing it to look at? Right, so build a chicane, turn towards Jesus. So if you had a road that I'm kind of representing here to reinforce Jesus, what would I do? Well, maybe I'd write Jesus over here and I'd say, I need to look at Jesus. So I take my J car and turn it. Oh, what's that car looking at? Probably Jesus. Oh, who designed this road? Who put that sign up? I did, with Jesus's help. And so Jesus will help people. That's called self-reinforce. So he will have people start building, and he already does this, in tandem with Jesus, co-creating a course of study, a course of life that reinforces not money. It attends to money just enough to live on, but it strongly reinforces what you see here. That green car just got some Jesus. How about the blue car? Oh, it was starting to. Okay, so a chicane draws attention. And what is attention? Attention is worship. Underlying the concept of worship is what you bring your attention to. Where your treasure is, there your heart is. Where your heart is, there's your treasure. So chicane draws my attention. I told you about the 12 memories. I set that up so that every day I would run into the 12 memories. And I go 1, 2, 3, and I go through and so I've set up a course. And but I actually run into things, and so I'm still building that thing out. And it's changed. The chicane draws attention, and it channels love. So what I'm trying to do is channel what I love, because there's lots of things as a human. I can love beer, I can love prestige of men, but there's other things I can love that are better for me. Not the prestige of men, the love of God, and not seeking the prestige of men. Seeking different forms of friendship. Okay, we're near the end here. And so people are already kind of aware, like, of what I just shared with you is kind of a coming technology where this is from the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, and I ran into it in one of their study manuals. As your family reads these chapters, whatever it is, pay attention to how the Savior used everyday things, be it wind, water, food, to preach spiritual truths. So one of the things that I do is I build things where I'm running into Jesus things every day. So right now, for however long we've been going, quite a long time on this, what have we been talking about? Spiritual things, things that moth and rust would not corrupt, things that would be look like the Book of Mormon, big snooze fest to Mark Twain, chloroform on print. But for us, treasured things, that's where my heart is, and I want it to be. And so Jesus TV for me is a way to focus. Just like TV, if I said, I want to focus on things of the world, well, then why don't you watch Game of Thrones again? Yeah, let's watch that, because then I could focus on things of the world, because those are made by Hollywood stars. And what are they focused on, Greg? Carnal securities. That they have to make money, so they have to have gratuitous sex scenes and so forth. So that would for sure train my mind. What everyday things do you use to self-reinforce the money-centric, carnal-centric culture you have received? And so one of the things people focus a lot of their attention on is the home. Why do they have to focus their attention on the home? Because homes cost about 40%, upwards of 40% of their life energy. That life energy is turned into money because Citibank's not interested in them giving pieces of their flesh to Citibank. What they want is money. So you go to work, you take 40% of your life energy and you give it to Citibank. And what do? Well, they agree they'll maintain an illusion that you own your home. You don't. Most people never get it paid off. And so once again, it's the I, like that's in my eye socket, redeem my life story by turning it over to Jesus, my Redeemer, who helps me receive a different story with the same set of facts. So one of the most important divine chicanes that guide our lives is the story that we tell about what's happening right now in my life. So we are storytellers, whether we like it or not, we tell a story. Where we've learned to tell stories is Hollywood, our parents and so forth, but it's corrupt story. It's not a Jesus story. It's not a Jesus heavy story. I'm with Jesus. I'm doing this with Jesus. I'm doing that with Jesus. No, it's not. It's I'm doing this. I'm doing that. The phrase we hear in America right now is, I got this. Who's got it? Jesus? No, I got this. Oh, did you say Jesus got this? No, I got this. Okay, I heard you. So let's see. Dynamic journal, one man's life story, turning over to Jesus. So I'm not going to click on that later. When you come to this place, you can click on that. I'll give you the link. You can look more about how to turn your life story over to Jesus, how to narrate your own story, because the story in the beginning was the Word. So why is my emphasis on this and not on some tangible thing? Because ultimately, how you're going to get closer to Jesus is by learning to tell a new story. And that's what I'm doing right here. Like I'm practicing, I'm telling a story. Jesus says to Greg, for you, Greg, heaven can't wait. You need to build this thing now. Jesus says to Greg, and come, let us adore him. So I'm trying to adore God all the time. And that's how you, whatever you're adoring or spending your time focusing on, what you're thinking about, talking about, preaching about, prophesying about, writing according to your prophecies, those kind of things will occupy your thoughts and it will create your reality. So fundamentally, this is about reality creation. Let's see if we got another slide here. And we use our sacred imagination. So I'm trying to plug into my life stories of Jesus. Tell me the stories of Jesus, but have them be like real 2022. And so I've got a story that I tell myself. Yeah, so I've got a friend who writes prophetic poetry. Jesus helps him do that. Oh, really? Yeah. How do you connect with that, Greg? Well, Jesus has this television program. It's a worldwide television program. We're just starting up. Anyways, you've heard that story. That's my Jesus story. And I'm engaging others with it. You could call it my little universe. And I'm saying, hey, Jonathan, come on over. Well, Jonathan's about ready to start his own universe, if you will, his own play place, which I think's good. So Jonathan's about ready. This is a little ad for Jonathan to do his own Jesus TV or whatever he wants to call it. I'm just going to help set him up so he'll be able to do that. But what we're doing, both of us, is an approximation of what's coming. 10 years from now, this understanding that we can create our own worlds is going to be very dominant. We're coming to a beautiful place where we understand, like, oh, I've always been creating my world, but it's been hijacked. Here's the thing, it's been hijacked because other people can hijack, just like I hijacked the talking stick from Jonathan. Here, I'm gonna go in this direction, and here I go. Boom, we're driving this baby. And so what we're gonna do is set up Jonathan so that he can have his own playland, and that's what God will have me do. Ultimately, these technologies are to help others get your own playland together, get your own Jesus land. It'd be like creating your own Disneyland. And it's like, oh, what rides do I want? Right. So that when people go through there, or most importantly, when you wake up in the morning and you travel through your life, it says what in my life needs to repeat the theme. Jesus is with me. I'm keeping his commandments, so his spirit is with me. And if I'm not keeping his commandments, I'm repenting. So it really doesn't matter if I keep his commandments as long as I repent, which Jesus says that is correct. Just repent and mean it. And so that's, let's see, I think I got to the last, let's see. Next slide. I get retrained using a chicane based on Sacred Simulator, comprised of memorization cards. And you're looking at these cards. That's what this was and still is. Each one of these, you can say, well, oh, those are slides. Well, you can call them slides or cards. When I look at them, they remind me, Greg, what is your mission in life? To retrain my mind and heart so I can get closer to Jesus, and then to show others how to do that. Oh, how are you going to do that? Well, part of that, I'm going to have this thing called Jesus TV, where I go online, and then those are available on YouTube. Oh, well, was that preparatory to the time when in the future people had their own metaverse or multiverse? Yes, it was, because Jesus knew that was coming. So in 2015, he gave me a preliminary. He told me about that before it actually came. And he said, that's what I made you for. You're an architect, an engineer in early Zion. Early Zion will be prototyped online and in real, what they call the meatverse, like the regular world, the touchy. And so that's what we're doing here. Thanks, Jonathan. I think that covers all of it. I kind of shove it in here, but I saw the connection between Jonathan's poem, like what's coming, and this idea of technology. So your poem emphasized technology, and it was my opportunity to say, God has given me a technology. It's like Pong, so it's not super developed, super immersive, but it is anticipatory of what's coming. And what's coming are kind of like two different things. One would be this, if you're using Star Wars, that's coming, okay? Ooh, yeah, look at that. And that's called advanced technology. It's called VR, AR, artificial AI, using AI, artificial intelligence. It's going to use virtual reality, VR. It's going to use XR. It's going to use quantum computers. And those things will be used in combination to be able to create a beautiful thing where people can represent their inner life and share that with the world. And it'll have a lot of good. But God told me that, Greg, I want you to do leapfrog technology, which we're going to leap over that. And so at the very time that this other technology that I just spoke of, that Mark Zuckerberg's working on, Jesus is doing this other thing that's like the force. Greg, put that down. What? This? Yeah, put the headset down. I'm going to show you how to do this without any of that. Like, oh, well, that's weird, but we're going to use some of that. So he's still uses that because I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube. So he's using these and he will use both. So it's like a fullness, but ultimately we actually have, because of our brains, we have the most powerful supercomputer. Each one of us still, our brains are way more powerful than the most powerful supercomputer on the earth. And so these computers have to interact with our brain to be of any use at all, because they just they interact with light diodes and so forth. And so he wants to emphasize that, which is the brain we know about, but there's also something we don't know about, and it's called infinite intelligence, that we have inside of us even more advanced technology. And that's what we would just like, okay, can we just call it the force? Yes, we can call it the force. And could you develop that right now? Or do you have to wait till Mark Zuckerberg gets his thing done? Don't wait. You can start developing that right now, just in the way that we talked about Jonathan and I, listening and following that voice, doing what it tells you to do, because that's all Luke was told. Hey, don't use that thing. Now, when I tell you to push the button and aim, and so he did, and he did it with his feelings. And that's, yeah, few will find interest in this, like what we're talking about. I get that. So I want to emphasize that, but I'm okay with that. I expected that. That's what Jesus prophesied to me. And I'm only talking to the few. I'm only talking to the very few. And here's the funny thing that Jonathan said. They already know this. All I am is a second witness. They've been told the same thing, maybe in different language. And I like that, like, hallelujah.
Can I interject something?
Absolutely, all you want now.
Okay, so, oh, if I can remember what it was. Yeah, it kind of feels like I don't really know, like, I guess we'll just see what comes I kind of wonder if, each person is going to have to do what they can to survive in our own souls with whatever comes. It's like, the great and terrible day has come for other people. And for us, it's like, you're talking about cards, things that you look at that remind you of things.
They enlarge the memory. Scripturally, they call it enlarging the memory so that you have a bright recollection and you can remember. Because you think, like, if God's so good, why wouldn't I remember that? That's the mind blowers. Like, you have people that you love that you haven't talked to for years. Like, why haven't I? Our lives went by as though it were a dream. And that's one of the things God wants me to understand. It's a dream. Our lives went by like it's a vivid dream, Greg. So we have to have technology, and we'll have these where we'll grab that dream and like, I'm going to be a vivid dreamer. And it's like the only reason that I refresh because I have these technologies that like, oh, so you can't really avoid it. No, that I have these routines. And it's like, what do you think other people who were disciples had? They would wake up and they would go to work, boom, 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 on these things that didn't produce big sweaty wads of cash, but did keep God in their mind. And so for Mother Teresa, and I think one of the things you're trying to point out is it's different for all different people, correct? Mother Teresa, her way in which she connected with God, it was a meditation. It was through the meditation of service. She would actually imagine herself giving service, attending to the body of Christ. When she was taking care, because she said this, I'm not making this up, and Pope John Paul was the one that in his homily or whatever to her, said she really took serious, Matthew 25:40, in as much as you do it unto the least of these, my brethren. So she imagined that's really Jesus. So when I'm doing this, that's what gave her the strength to be in Calcutta, doing a lot of low, nasty work. Let's get rid of those maggots for you, shall we? Here, let's have a cup of soup. Her life going by, tick, tick. taking care of low, gross, stinky, poopy people, but with joy in her heart. Oh, hallelujah. And the cool thing about Mother Teresa, in her journal, she'd like, I don't hear anything. God, you're not talking to me. When I heard that, just broke my heart. Oh, that woman, she did it even though she couldn't. There was times of complete darkness, but she professed his name. I'm like, oh, I want to meet you, Mother Teresa, because I haven't been that, but I couldn't do that. If God was that silent to me, I'm doing his work, but she did it. And so I'm using her as an example. I don't know her very well, but I'm saying she didn't have to do all these card crap things that I'm doing or memorizing or songs or Jesus TV. She had a divine chicane that God had her set up, and it was called Sisters of the Cross or something like that. And she set up this thing where she took care of dead people. I mean, dying people, sometimes dead people. And she, by doing that, she was able to think of Christ. And interesting, she said, this is what God wanted to emphasize, because he brought it back. So I haven't studied her for a while, but she said, I practiced the Eucharist. Okay, you guys know what the Eucharist is? It's like the sacrament. She practiced taking pieces of Jesus and putting her in her mouth every morning. And she credited that with one of her disciplines. And I know why, because it helped remind her viscerally, what am I doing? And who am I taking in? She wasn't in Vegas saying, hey, what happens in Vegas? She was in Calcutta putting stuff in her mouth saying it was Jesus, believing that. And then she would go help people. That woman, she had the high technology. I mean, she combined it with low technology, a piece of wafer and so forth, and a little drink of wine. And she would imagine herself taking Jesus's blood and covenanting, I will serve you, I'm married to you. And within the faith tradition, I loved her imagination. And I'm trying to recreate some of those same things in a way that works for me. Well, Greg, you're not in Calcutta. I know Jesus has not told me go to Calcutta, but I would do it. You don't think I would do it? I would do anything to be able to do what I'm doing now. Because I'm like, I've tasted it. Oh my goodness, it is sweeter than all that's sweet. And I want more. And so I'll do anything. And so some of the things I'm doing seem kind of crazy, but if you go look at Mother Teresa, there weren't a lot of people lining up to do exactly what she was doing, but were there? They're called nuns, yes, and she had a whole bunch of them, and they still do it. I guess her organization continues, but it's not for everybody. God does not call everybody to that. And so I just give it up to you and God. Yeah.
I think you hit on what I was gonna say, was that it's something like that. It's something like that, and it's hard to express it, but I think that's it. I think that's it. Her imagination. I think you hit the nail on the head. I can't express it any better than that.
And I'll say something more connected to it though, the divine chicane. See, do you know how Jonathan does it? See, and I'm going to tell on Jonathan. I see a guy who's clamoring, just trying to get as much Jesus as he can. Okay. Do you know how he does it? I'll tell you the main thing: tribulation. God is like, and I know that of myself. So if you said, hey, so I understand you guys go on a path that gets you close to Jesus, I'd say, yeah, it's kind of like a Golgotha path. It hurts. It hurts. It's not comfortable. It keeps us awake. You can't go to sleep, literally losing sleep. I know Jonathan shared that and so forth, like having a hard time going to sleep. And what did Jonathan do? Go get some booze? He could have. I totally get it. Go get some booze. He did it. He got a booze approximation. And what is that, Greg? He got intoxicated with more Jesus. He just like, okay, I'm going to force this down because we're not used to that much Jesus. And that's what Mother Teresa did as well, so that she could stay sane, because it was insane, the people she was taking care of, the neglect that her society had, the poverty they lived in. But here's the thing: God set it all up. You mean somebody wanted this to happen? Pretty much. He either purposed it or permitted it. Either way, they were exactly where they needed to be. And so here's the thing. You don't have to do anything I'm talking about because you're already on the path. Here's the beauty. It just helps to know, like, so you're saying these things that I'm going through seem like, oh, I'm going here, going there. Those have been designed. Yes, that's the
And
key.
it feels like we're entering into the entire world is about to enter something like you're describing, where it's
Yes,
going to be
it
a
will
force
teach us all together.
that
Yes.
we can't control, that is kind of divinely being, and it's going to shape and mold. And I think the prayer of my heart is that my desire is that everybody, that if someone's listening to this, it's like, I don't know, it kind of feels like it's time to sign up for whatever this is,
Yep.
to not wait until we're forced into it.
Yeah.
It's like to try to listen. And it's like, obviously we're going to get it wrong to some extent. It's like,
Yep.
it's like it's Greg and I are two very flawed people.
Yep.
And that's, I think, it's so abundantly obvious.
Yep.
It's like, but I think I realized at one point that I could not use that as an excuse.
Yeah. That's right.
I couldn't use it as an excuse not to say what could be said while it could be said, and to do what I could.
Hallelujah. That's right.
And so let's see what God unfolds. It's like, I'm excited to see, because every person has a role in this. It's not like the world where you're like a cog that they can take out. It's like, you fall down the steps and break your hip, and so you don't have a job anymore because they can fill it with some other cog. It's like every person is needed in this last great work, and we're all going to have to listen, because there's not going to be a man at the head anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, there are men who are at the head of different organizations, but not really. Like unless you have a connection with the divine, unless you're doing the work like Luke Skywalker in the swamp.
That's right.
It's
Yeah,
like,
that's
unless you're doing the work personally, like, it won't be enough. Like, yeah, you can go and you can read something that somebody wrote 2,500 years ago, and that'll help, but it won't be. You're going to have a connection. So it's like, and do your best, and I'm doing my best. And so that's all.
yeah, that's right. It would be like if we're prophesying like in 1930, we're saying, hey, we think there's going to be a Nazi power coming here, and we Jews are not going to be a favored people. Oh, that kind of actually sound crazy, because we have spent centuries in Germany with no problems. And it's like, oh, you guys are overestimating. I totally get it. But we're like, it might be a good idea for you to start, and then we might have some practical solutions that might get them out of the country, or just suffer well, just get ready for what's coming, because Jonathan and I don't have enough money ourselves. We're not going to go to New York. We're just poor. So it looks like we're stuck unless we can get over to Poland. But something tells me Poland's still not going to be good, which it wouldn't be. Okay, go ahead.
There's no place left. I think that's the struggle. Okay,
yes.
So like, they could retreat to another country. The problem is that now there's no place left.
Yes, I agree.
The only place to retreat is to a place within yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes, and then to move and gather with similar people, because there is going to be safety, but you have to do generally. So God has promised that if you will pay attention to that light that's inside of you, call it what you want, Jiminy Cricket, the Great Spirit, if you will pay a lot of attention to that, it will be well with you and your family. Because, and it's not even about avoiding death. He wants us to avoid the worst thing of all, fear. Because the opposite of fear is faith. He just wants us to be faithful servants. That's all. And guess what? If you're faithful, death's not a big deal. We're all going to die. There's some people who are just so happy. They've lived, they're 80 years old and they're just giddy. Why? Because the doctor just said, I think you got about 24 hours left. They're happy. They are so happy. Why? Because they get to go the other side. I mean, like, yeah, they're sad. You're like, oh yeah, some people are going to be sad, but they're just glad if they've been trying to hang on. And so that's where God has put in my heart, is that the biggest foul in this whole thing is if you get fearful. Well, I'm going to tell you what, you are going to get fearful unless you learn to be at peace, and seek a peace that surpasses all understanding. If you find somebody that offers that, who's not immortal, okay, this is the key thing, who's not immortal, and you have experience with that, whoever that being is, I call him Jesus Christ, the one that I do, but if it's the universe, fine. Practice that, because we are about ready to practice under pressure. So it's like the best training you ever have. Like, oh, we did some special forces training. Well, now we're going to use live bullets, and these actually will hit you. So if you better be real careful. We're actually going to put real enemy. What? You're bringing we're bringing Russians who want to kill you, or Iranians, and we're putting them in Alabama, and we told them, kill all of our soldiers that you want to. So this is like war. Yeah, it's like war, the ultimate training. And it's like, and you know what? You guys are going to be fine. We're going to take care of your family. We'll give them each $1 million or something, each of your kids. Oh, wow. And so it's like, this training just became real. So this is where we're headed, is a training like this is real. And it was real, for the Germans back in the 1930s. It was real if you were in Oklahoma and the Dust Bowl came. This is real. And so,
Well,
go
let me
ahead.
say one more thing. I figure probably this one's gone kind of long, and so if people are still listening.
We filtered them out. There's only crazy people now. Yeah, we can count on the crazy people.
You and me and the crazy people. But no, I was just gonna say that's why I wrote that poem, Get Out. And that was when I had to leave early, and I don't want to say much more about it other than just like it's so important. Like, you don't understand the spirit of things. Like, it's time to withdraw from all of our strange allegiances. It's like you don't understand the spirit of things, because it's like you'll do things that you wouldn't expect that you do. It's like that's the time we're entering into. It's like and it's come to other countries. It's come to other times. It's like, I don't think this will be any worse than what happened in the Cultural Revolution in China. It's our time, and it's a time when, it's like, I watched a documentary on that, on the Cultural Revolution of China. And I mean, it was just insane, people going down the block and dragging out some old guy that was a landowner just because he was a landowner, and killing him, because slowly torturing him and killing. I mean, it's like, you don't understand. It's like, you think you're going to jump on, well, I'm going to jump on the side of the right, or I'm going to jump on the side of the left because I just can't handle it, or I'm going to jump on the side of whatever. And it's like, man, you don't understand. Like, it's time to choose peace and gratitude and trust, and whatever God you can worship. My goodness, like, if there's something that you worship which makes you be different than this world,
yes,
that can keep you from jumping in on either side, because I'll promise you, either side is going to go to war. And it's like, the time for us is the time to go inward, to start cleaning house, and that thing that you've been avoiding doing, that you need to do, or that thing that you shouldn't do. I mean, start seeking guidance from whatever being on the other side you can worship, which gives you light, and just seek. I don't know, I guess the word is repent, I guess. Well, it's like, it's time for us to get our souls right, because it's time to get out of the spiritual, just that. We've got to get, it's time to get out and get to whatever it is that can bring us to a better place.
Yeah, more light and truth. It can be simplified that there's a certain amount of hope we can gather but you can gather more than that. But you're going to have to give something up. Here's what I've had to learn is you have to sacrifice. How long halt you between two opinions? If God be God, then do it. If the devil be God, then go for him. Then once you choose, then you can aggressively go after. And that's one of the things I've learned, like, oh, I can aggressively go after you, Jesus, like you aggressively go after. You'll leave the 99 to go get the one. And I felt that. I'm like, so I will do that. I will sacrifice so much because I trust like you. And as I do, so like yesterday, I haven't been in that kind of spiritual situation for a long time. And it was weird. It's like, this is kind of crazy. So, but he was leading me to meet certain people. And I like to this day, like what's going to happen there? I don't know, but it's about housing some people out in the West Desert of Utah. And when I talked to this woman, I said, yeah, so we're in charge of, and this, when this is coming out of my mouth, I'm like, what? I'm like, who's saying this? I said, yeah, so we are going throughout Utah and finding places of sanctuary where people can come, places they can park their vehicles and so forth. And as I'm saying it, like, oh, that's what we're doing. Because I was meeting with this woman, and later I learned her name, and it was a miraculous name. I'm not going to say what it is, but that was enough. So I didn't know what her last name. I said, well, tell me your last name. And her first name already hinted. I'm like, oh, that's a nice name, you know, if you're into Jesus. And then later at the very end of our day, I'd asked for her name because I wanted to give her a check for the thing she'd give me. She didn't say her last name. And Jesus waited all the way to the last, you know, after we've been there hours. And I'm saying goodbye.
There's something I want to talk to you about after we finish.
Yeah, that's fine. And I said, and I didn't ask for it, but she said, you know what my last name is? And she said it. And I'm just like, okay, all right. And what that was for me, because I've learned to like, God was sealing the deal, because I'm like, God, what am I doing here? Now, I still can't tell you how that's all going to work, what's going to happen, but I'm like, oh, it's on. I mean, I'm like, yeah, that's you know, when she said that last name, I'm like, and that was all because of the preliminary things. When I first met her, I'm like, God is with this woman. Oh, that's interesting, you know. And she's a low person, you know, house is a crumbling mess and so forth. In other words, for me, meeting all the criteria, yeah, this sounds like the right person to be with for me, right? Because I'm like, yeah, a nobody. It's like, yep, I'm supposed to be here. And then we're like doing this thing. And I thought it was this other thing. But that yesterday, I'm like, you're training me at a higher level. I could feel like, oh, you want me to do that? Because the last time I felt like that was when I literally went crazy. That was when I was born again. I went through a manic episode. And it was a spiritual manic episode. And it was wild and weird. And I was seeing things and so forth. And I knew that it was both crazy and God. And how God does that, I don't know. Well, yesterday, it wasn't manic. And I just like, but it felt so much like it. And it was like, wow, that's like I'm on some kind of trip here and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And I could tell God's like, get used to this feeling. And I'm just like, and I told my wife, I said, oh, you know what God just told me? It's like The Stand. So Stephen King wrote a book called The Stand. If you ever watch the movie, it's like a long television episode. But I've watched it like 3 times, not because I really like it, but because God wanted to talk to me in it. And these people are led by God, not knowing beforehand the things they should do. And they end up in the story thwarting the devil, but and not really knowing. They just all played their part. And God said, this is how it's going to be. So yesterday, that was the message, that he will have all these different people playing their parts. They won't see the other people's part. They won't know, and they'll just do what they're supposed to. Just kind of like you would if you were like a soldier, say like in a war. You're not going to have the generals tell you what they're doing and what their game plan is. Oh my goodness. If you knew all that stuff and the enemy captured you, well, that's bad. But also you would say, I'm just going to be cannon fodder. Your plan has for me to be the first wave. We're going to die. Well, you don't want your guys to think that, so just don't tell them. No, we're just doing an exercise, because we'd all resist God too if we knew where he was leading us. Oh no, I'm going to lose my family. I will not go. No, what God would do that? And so we just go one day at a time, and then he'll unfold these things. And so that's what I got yesterday, Jonathan, to what you're talking about, is he started writing and tattooing on my heart, on my fleshy heart, so I'd remember, this is how it's going to be. I'm like, ooh, this is going to be hard to get used to, because I'm just like, I'm using all this gas. It was diesel. This is not my truck. And I thought I was doing this, but it turns out it was this. And there wasn't communication. And it's like, yeah, because I remember my brother-in-law went to Iraq. And that's what he felt like. He was in this thing that he had no control over. People were just telling him what to do, and they didn't have the right equipment. They were doing things which they were not assigned to do. Well, get used to that. If you're going to follow Jesus in these last days, you do what the voice tells you to do. However crazy it is, you'll just have to pray twice. Okay, I'm going to do this. And then he'll stop you. Nope, just wanted to see if you would do it. So that's it. Yesterday, I'm like, maybe it's a nothing burger. Maybe it's just like, no, we're not going to bring people out there and have homeless people. Maybe it was just like, will Greg do this? Well, he already knows the answer. Look, I just did. So I felt like it was a success, that I learned what I needed to learn. Yeah. And now I can actually prophesy for those who are called to similar missions. It's what I have to get used to. You're not going to get to see why he's doing. Maybe later it'll make sense. Like, oh, that makes sense. But I told the people, they said, well, so when are we going to do this? I said, I have no idea. I said, I can see what must happen. We have to have a person who says, I'm ready to live on that land and help this woman, because it's a charity thing, but they will help prepare that land as a sanctuary. But that person has to be competent. It can't be a meth using lunatic. No, the first person who's there. That's what I sense from God. In other words, we just wait for that person. I don't have to do a thing. That's the beauty, is like, when are you going to do anything? I'm just going to wait for it. And the woman said, I said, it could be next year. It could be 10 years from now. And the woman says, it could be a day from tomorrow. And when she said that, I'm like, so I'm asking, is that going to happen tomorrow? Because sometimes those things will be said. And you're like, did she just prophesy? And so like, I don't know, but I'll wait till tomorrow's Friday. If somebody comes into my life and they go, I like what you guys are doing, and we want a place to stay that's free. I want to get off my mortgage, and I want to build this sanctuary. I'll go, bingo, but I'll wait for years if that's necessary. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'll say this will be my closing thing, I think, and then I want to talk to you offline for a minute. But
sounds good.
Just, I've been around people who tried to do this sort of thing, and I admire their efforts. I've seen some good things. The strange thing is that all the work really happens inside. There is something coming with housing that I want to talk to you about.
Sure.
Privately, but I have this feeling too, it's going to be something, it's going to be very much out in the open. It's like, there's really no hiding from anybody nowadays. It's like, and the idea of a sanctuary where we're going to escape what's coming is really not, except for the spiritual sanctuary within our own hearts. And
sure.
And, there'll be places with whatever comes, it's supposing that, it's, there's maybe people are saying now there could be civil war soon, and there could be, who knows. It's like, it's been said that eventually one day we'll be invaded. Who knows? If all that comes, it's like there'll probably be safe places where someone will be safe for a little while and they'll be safe somewhere else. But I have the feeling there is something coming. This is the thing I want to talk to you privately about, is just there is something which is very, very practical. And I don't know if the thing that you met with her about is part of this or not, but it's a way of life, a way of being, it's part of the new economy. And that will be done out in the middle of West Desert. It'll be done, I think, in the middle of cities. It'll be done out here on the BLM that I'm right next to. You know, it's like, I think maybe it happens even already. But the important thing is that it's like, is that just like all times in history, just, you know, in your and my life, we have something to do to help other people,
Yep.
to love other people, to
Yep.
do what we can to speak the truth,
Yep.
and to suffer whatever consequences there comes for speaking the truth. It's nothing, I can't think of anything we've said that's too terribly radical. It's just,
No.
it's just,
Yeah.
it's just like, you know, I think we're saying the same thing that people have been saying through ages.
Yep.
And to bring it full circle, just, you know, the poem we started out with, and that you shared some of the idea of a path that God, a winding path that God leads us on. It's like, I think whatever is coming is it's better than anything that our culture has imagined.
Yes.
Let's be grateful. Let's keep our eyes forward. Let's, you know, and if we get a little bit of inspiration that guides us to do something, let's do so humbly and prayerfully, you know. And I believe that there's a better world that is coming, but it's going to come not because we were smart or strong or efficient, but because we were humble, we were
And because
faithful, we believed, and we kept our eyes ahead of us.
and it's because, like Brigham Young said, because God will use the wedge. He will wedge, and so he's going to deliver us. We'll declare, like Brigham Young, oh, we were so spiritual that we decided that we're going to leave and go into the wilderness. No, they were going to come kill you, Lehi. No, they were going to come kill you, Brigham Young. So tell the whole story, which he did, to his credit. It's like, yeah, we had to leave because we were afraid they were going to kill us. And they probably were. And so when you were speaking, one of the things I look forward to, like the great and dreadful day, that I have great anticipation. I have friends right now who are unequally yoked. They are on fire about Jesus, but their spouse is not. Jesus doesn't always pour the same amount of love into their hearts, Jesus' love, and some of them don't receive it until they have enough divine chicane that they're able to receive it. So what God will do is release them. Boom. And I'm looking forward to joining with them. And like, which ones? The Jesus people. The people who talk of Christ, preach of Christ, prophesy of Christ, write according to the prophecies. It's Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And there'll be others, different camps. So if it was Burning Man, they have all these different camps. But everybody's there together, what? To celebrate free expression. There's certain major themes. But you go with your camp. So if you want to go over there with the people that are doing the orgies, you go down there with that. And these other people who are dressing up like Mad Max from Thunderdome, you go ahead and go do that. Maybe you can kind of go visit that. But I'd probably be over here with the Christians serving pancakes 24/7, free pancakes, preaching the word of God, singing Jesus songs. And I would also go visit those other camps to say hi to my friends. Hi, Stephen Dean. He'd be in a different camp. They would have its own religious or spiritual theme. I think he would. And Jonathan might be in a different camp. So that is a precursor. God gave us Burning Man as a precursor so I could understand like what he's going to do. He's going to gather people, and the people I'm interested are gathering in the name of Christ or on the name of love and so forth. So I don't know exactly how it's going to roll out, but we're gathering for a purpose. And this is what people always gather for: sanctuary. We would not gather if God had not. So you have people right now gathering at the border. Oh, is it because they're going to have a big party? It's they're going to die if they stay in Mexico. Their town has drug lords. They've seen the police chief get murdered. their kids are not going to be able to see the next day if they don't leave. And so they leave. Oh, look, they're joining with other people because they like other people from Latin America. No, they're joining because God has brought the love fan, Jesus's love fan, and it blows people around. And so the thing we're talking about is hear his voice, but here's the thing. He will bring enough power to separate spouses, and he's doing it. I've seen people separated so that they can have those experiences. Families are separated, and he says he will. And that's what's going to be beautiful. But I personally, my selfish heart, I want to be around Jesus freaks. I want people who I love Jesus TV. Oh yeah, can we help with Jesus TV? I'd say, take it over. Yeah, because I got other things that Jesus will have me build. I would only do that if Jesus told me to, but that's what I'm anticipating. But I know it won't happen until one thing happens, the great and dreadful day, that the economy has to fall. So you can have these sanctuaries. Nobody's coming. Are you kidding me? The West Desert of Utah, nobody's coming until something that approximates what's called the Great Depression. Go look it up on Wikipedia if you don't know what that is. God says there's going to be a greater one. And during my lifetime and Jonathan's lifetime, I believe, this is all belief, that we're going to see a Great Depression that surpasses what my great grandma had to live through, taking her kids through. And it was like the Dust Bowl and World War II. We're going to see bigger things. And what's great about it is we're going to gather. It's like a funeral. You're like, well, how was the funeral? You know what? Most people who have fake funerals, if they love their family, it's mostly great because they had their weepy time when they found out, dad or mom died or whatever. And then they're finally comforting one another, like, oh, they're together. But what are they comforting them about? Death. But they're talking, they're laughing about stories. That is what we're going to do. We're going to gather. And some people are going to gather in the name of fear. So they'll be all about guns and, the government, and let them, I hope I don't have to get drugged into that. So that's what you were talking about. No, you better pull out of that. And other people are going to be geeking on other things that aren't my religious, my spiritual thing, and that's fine. And I wish them well. I may come visit both camps, but I'm going to have my base camp, and I'll know what it is because it's like what the universe I'm creating. My universe is off-putting to people. Like, I don't want to gather with Greg. I don't want him to my beer parties. He'll talk about Jesus and alcoholism, how we're all going to become alcoholics. So I'll be cast out. Hallelujah. Ooh, I don't want to come to your party if I make you feel uncomfortable. Are you kidding me? Yeah. Why don't you go over there with those people who are comfortable talking in Christ, preaching in Christ, prophesying in Christ, having Jesus-centric culture? But I want to emphasize right now, because that's not a bad time to re-emphasize what Jonathan, and it's Jonathan's mission to emphasize, well, not everybody's into Jesus or religion. Or religious denominations. That's correct. And what I like in my religion, hey, we claim the privilege of worshiping Almighty God, and we support anybody. Do what you like to do. I'm just an example of somebody who's doing what I like to do. If I was an atheist, I hope I'd be the same kind of atheist. Hey, you religious people, do what you want to do. I love not believing in Jesus. Woo, I love not believing in God. And I hope that I'd be on the other side of the fence going, I totally support that guy. Woo, because my Jesus says, yeah, people should be free to do that. And you see, let's watch what that guy does. Well, he's feeding the homeless. I got no problem. An atheist who feeds the homeless, I think there's a lot of Jesus in that guy. Yeah, but he calls himself an atheist. He can call himself anything he wants. I see Jesus in him. And so at our Jesus People potluck, we had an atheist. He didn't like to stick around for the prayer, but he would come and he wasn't afraid. And I called him our token atheist. And we just worked to understand him. So when I say I'm looking for the Jesus tribe, I think Jesus will have it be quite a mix. He sat with sinners, for instance. His world wasn't all full of Bible believing, law of Moses emphasizing people. It was full of all kinds of people that he could minister to, and he was okay with that. Well, so am I. That's what I really have even now in my life, and I'm comfortable with that. But if Jesus wants to put a party on a Jesus party, which I know he does, he's going to gather these people. Isaiah prophesied of them, how, what their denomination is. I think there'll be a combination, so forth. They're going to have love in their hearts. And those are the ones that I'll join with. But in particular, yeah, I'm particular to Jesus. Why? I don't know. It's kind of the same way why somebody's particular to a style of music. I just like classical music. And then they'll go pretty too far and they'll go, it's really the only kind of music there is. Like, oh, and I love that expression. It may be hyperbole because it's not the only kind of music there is, but if that's your thing, I honor that. And that's the Jesus people want to do that. Love our enemies. Oh, yeah. You guys don't like us. You think we're part of a cult. Oh, yeah. Oh, Jesus killed a lot of people in the name of Jesus. People like, yeah, you're right. And what's your conclusion? Well, then you should give up Jesus. Well, I'm not going to do that, but I allowed you your statement, and that's good. So thank you, Jonathan, for letting me do the talking stick on that. We've done a long one. Anything else you want to say?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Now I'm going to stop recording, then we'll talk if there's anything else.